The moment Lena Carter's blade sliced through the canvas, she became a dead woman walking. Three armed men, one exit, and beneath her trembling hands, a ledger that could topple an empire, the same empire that destroyed her father 15 years ago. The chemical alarm screamed through Chicago's Brennan Museum as orange gas billowed from the vent she'd triggered. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred, but clutched against her chest was proof of everything. Names, numbers, blood money traced in faded ink. She didn't know the man waiting in the shadows outside would be far more dangerous than the bullets chasing her. If you want to see how a quiet art conservator becomes something far darker, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The October rain came down in sheets against the tall windows of the Brennan Museum's conservation lab, turning Chicago's skyline into a watercolor blur. Lena Carter stood at her workstation on the third floor, hands steady despite the coffee she'd skipped that morning, examining a painting that had arrived 3 days ago with almost no provenance information. Woman in Blue, circa 1960s. Oil on canvas. Donor. Anonymous. She'd seen 1,000 paintings like this. Unremarkable. Probably worth less than the frame it came in. The kind of piece that museums accepted out of politeness and stored in climate-controlled basements forever. Except this one had a problem. The varnish had started crackling along the lower right corner, spiderwebbing across the woman's hands in the portrait. Normal aging, except the pattern was wrong. Too geometric, too deliberate. Lena leaned closer, her dark hair falling forward as she angled her magnifying lamp. She'd been a conservator for 6 years, ever since she'd fled her hometown of Marion, Illinois, and the wreckage of her father's trial. 6 years of keeping her head down, her questions to herself, her past buried under a new name and a carefully constructed life. "You're still here?" Marcus Chen, the senior conservator, stood in the doorway with his jacket already on. "It's 7:30, Lena. The gala's over. Everyone else went home 2 hours ago." "I know." She didn't look up. "There's something off about this one. There's always something off. That's why they pay us." He walked over anyway, because Marcus was decent that way. "What have you got?" "Look at this craquelure pattern." She traced the cracks with a gloved finger, not quite touching. "It's too uniform. And see here? The paint layer underneath is a completely different composition. Different binder, different pigment density." Marcus squinted through the lamp. "So someone painted over an older work. Happens all the time." "Not like this." Lena reached for her solvent kit. "The underlayer is barely 20 years old, but it's sealed with an industrial fixative. Professional grade. Why would someone go to that trouble just to paint over it with amateur work?" Maybe they wanted to hide something. Maybe. She'd learned early in her career that paintings kept secrets. A change in attribution could be worth millions. A hidden signature could rewrite art history. And sometimes, very rarely, a painting hid something that had nothing to do with art at all. The solvent test took 15 minutes. Lena worked in careful sections, using cotton swabs to lift the newer paint layer. Marcus stayed, his curiosity apparently overriding his plans to get home to his husband. "Jesus," he said softly when the first numbers appeared. They weren't painted. They were printed, laserjet ink on a thin layer of treated paper that had been sealed directly onto the original canvas, then covered with a translucent base layer, then painted over with the portrait. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide this. "Is that a—" Marcus started. "Ledger, yeah." Lena's mouth had gone dry. "Account numbers, maybe? Transaction codes?" The numbers marched in neat columns, partially visible now through the section she'd uncovered. But there was more. Along the left margin, barely visible. Initials. Dates going back 15 years. Her hand froze. She knew one of those dates. November 2009, the month her father had been arrested. "I need to photograph this," she said, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. "Document everything before I go further." "Lena." Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. "If this is what I think it is, it's probably nothing." But her fingers were already moving, pulling out her documentation camera, adjusting the lights. In the conservation world, you photographed everything, every step, every discovery. It was protocol. It was also insurance. She took 12 shots from different angles, the camera's shutter clicking in the quiet lab. Rain hammered the windows. Somewhere below, a security guard made his rounds, his footsteps echoing up through the old building's bones. "I'm going to remove more of the overlayer," Lena said. "Can you get me the—" The lights went out. Not flickered. Died. Complete darkness except for the dim glow of emergency exit signs at either end of the hall. "Power outage?" Marcus said, but his voice had an edge to it. Lena's heart kicked against her ribs. The Brennan had backup generators. They should have engaged within seconds. "Get away from the windows," she said quietly. "What now?" She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the interior wall, her other hand already reaching for her phone. No signal. That wasn't right. The museum had cell boosters on every floor. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Coming up the main stairwell with the kind of disciplined rhythm that didn't belong to museum security. "Back exit," Marcus whispered. "There's—" The lab door crashed open. 3 men in tactical gear, faces covered, weapons drawn, professional, efficient. The kind of people who did this for a living. The first one spotted them immediately. "Don't move." Lena's mind raced. The painting was still on her workstation, partially uncovered. The camera was in her hand, and these men weren't here for the museum's collection of impressionist landscapes. "We're just conservators," Marcus said, hands up. "We don't have anything valuable. Shut up." The second man was already moving toward the workstation. He saw the painting, the exposed ledger, and something crossed his face. Confirmation. They'd come for this. Which meant someone knew, someone had been watching. The first man raised his weapon, and Lena saw in his eyes what was going to happen next. They hadn't come just for the painting. They'd come to erase the evidence, all of it. She had maybe 3 seconds. Her hand shot out and hit the emergency chemical release button mounted on the wall, the one they were never, ever supposed to use except for actual fires. The one connected to the halon suppression system for the textile storage room next door. Alarms shrieked. Orange gas began pouring from the vents. "Run!" she screamed at Marcus. She didn't wait to see if he listened. She grabbed the painting off the easel, all of it, frame and all, and bolted for the back corridor as the first shots rang out. The bullets hit where she'd been standing. Marcus was shouting. One of the men was yelling into a radio. And Lena was running through a cloud of orange chemical suppressant that burned her eyes and throat, the painting clutched against her chest. The back stairs were old, concrete and metal, that dated to the 1920s when the building was first constructed. She took them 2 at a time, her sneakers slipping on damp treads. Behind her, the footsteps were gaining. They were faster, better trained, and she was just a conservator who jogged sometimes when she remembered. She burst through the ground floor exit into the service alley behind the museum. Rain hit her face. The painting was already getting wet, the frame heavy and awkward in her arms. A van screeched around the corner, headlights blazing. More of them. Lena pivoted and ran the other direction toward the street, her mind calculating desperately. The main road was 2 blocks away. If she could reach it, reach people, witnesses. Something grabbed her from behind. She screamed and twisted, swinging the frame like a weapon. It connected with something solid, body armor maybe, and the grip released. "Stop fighting." The voice was male, calm, with an accent she couldn't place. "You're going to get yourself killed." She scrambled backward, finally getting a look at him in the dim glow of the streetlight. Not tactical gear. Expensive suit, now soaked with rain. Dark hair, sharp features. Eyes that assessed her with the cold precision of someone used to making split-second decisions about who lived and died. "Who the hell are you?" she gasped. "Someone who needs what you're holding." He gestured at the painting. "And you need to stop running before they catch you." "I'll scream." "Go ahead. They'll kill you before the police arrive." He took a step closer, hands visible, palms out. Non-threatening, except everything about him was threatening. "I'm offering you a choice, Miss Carter. Come with me right now, or die in this alley in the next 60 seconds. He knew her name. That shouldn't have been possible. She'd changed it legally 7 years ago when she left Marion. She was Lena Carter now, not Lena Moretti. Not the daughter of a convicted fraud who'd hanged himself in his cell before the appeal. How do you— No time. He was right. She could hear the van reversing, coming back their way. Choose. Every instinct told her to run. But instinct had kept her small, kept her hidden, kept her safe for 6 years. And safe had just died the moment those men walked into her lab. Lena looked at the painting in her arms, at the ledger hidden beneath the portrait, at the numbers and initials that had her father's fate written somewhere in their columns. If you're lying, you'll have wasted your last 30 seconds on Earth. He pulled out a phone, typed something one-handed. Now or never. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb behind him, silent and sleek and completely out of place in this neighborhood. Lena ran for it. She threw herself into the back seat, the painting crashing in beside her. The man slid in after her with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 100 times, and the car was already moving before his door closed. "Drive," he said to the person up front, a woman with short blonde hair and the same kind of expensive clothing that suggested this was very much not a random carjacking. They accelerated smoothly out of the alley. Through the rear window, Lena saw the van skid to a stop, saw men pour out, weapons drawn. One of them raised his gun. The Mercedes turned the corner, and they were gone, sliding into Chicago's late-night traffic like a shark into deep water. Lena's hands were shaking, her lungs burned from the chemical gas. Her clothes were soaked through, rain and sweat and fear mixed together. "Who are you?" she demanded. The man was already examining the painting, his fingers careful despite the urgency. "Adrian Vieri." The name meant nothing to her. Should it? "And you are very lucky," he continued, "that I have people watching the museum. Otherwise, you'd be dead and this would be destroyed." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Who else knows about the ledger?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence. You uncovered it. You photographed it. And now someone wants you dead because of it." His voice was calm, reasonable, terrifying. "So let's start with the truth. What did you find?" Lena's mind spun. The camera. She'd dropped it when she ran. But the photos? Her phone. The camera had Wi-Fi sync. If the photos had uploaded to her cloud backup, "I asked you a question," Adrian said quietly. "Transaction records," she said, because lying seemed pointless now. "Account numbers, dates, initials. It's a ledger. Someone hid it under a portrait." "Show me." She angled the painting toward him. In the Mercedes's interior lights, the exposed section of ledger looked even more damning. Columns of numbers, financial codes she didn't understand, and those initials, those dates. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. "No." "You're lying." "I know one date," she corrected. "November 2009, the month my father was arrested for securities fraud, the month his life ended." She met Adrian's stare. "So maybe you should tell me what this is." He studied her for a long moment. The Mercedes turned onto Lakeshore Drive, the water invisible in the darkness but present in the way the city opened up, the lights spreading out instead of closing in. "Your father was Carlo Moretti," Adrian said. It wasn't a question. Lena's blood ran cold. "How do you know that?" "Because his name is in this ledger, along with mine, my family's, and about 30 other people who would very much like this to disappear." He tapped the canvas. "Your father didn't commit fraud, Miss Carter. He discovered one, and he died because of it." The words hit like a physical blow. "You're lying. I'm the only person in this city telling you the truth." Adrian leaned back, his wetsuit somehow still immaculate, his attention never leaving her face. "The people who just tried to kill you? They work for the same organization that framed your father. And now they know you've seen the evidence. Then I'll go to the police." "With what? A painting you stole from your employer? Allegations you can't prove?" He shook his head. "You'll be arrested for theft, and you'll die in custody before you can testify. That's how this works." "And your solution is what? I just trust you?" "No." Adrian glanced out the window as they passed Navy Pier, the Ferris wheel dark at this hour. "My solution is you work with me. You have expertise I need. I have resources you need. We find out who's behind this, we expose them, and we both get what we want. Which is, I want to know who in my organization is trying to kill me." He said it so casually, like discussing the weather. "You want to clear your father's name. The ledger is the key to both." Lena looked down at the painting in her lap, at the portrait of a woman in blue that someone had used as a hiding place for secrets that had killed her father. "What makes you think they're trying to kill you?" "Because half the accounts in that ledger are mine. Legitimate transactions that someone has been carefully mixing with illegal ones for years. Adrian's jaw tightened, the first sign of real emotion. Someone is setting me up to take the fall for a criminal network I didn't build, and they're doing it from inside my own family. The Mercedes pulled up to a building Lena didn't recognize. Not a police station, not a safe house. A luxury high-rise in the Gold Coast, all glass and steel and understated wealth. "This is your choice," Adrian said. "Walk away now, and you're on your own. Those men will find you in a matter of hours. Or come upstairs, let my people keep you alive, and help me figure out who's behind this before they kill us both." "That's not a choice." "No," he agreed. "It's not. But it's the only one you have." Lena looked at him, really looked. At the expensive suit and the calm demeanor and the eyes that had seen things she probably couldn't imagine. He was dangerous. Possibly more dangerous than the men who'd attacked the museum. But he was also right. She had no proof, no allies, no plan. Just a painting with a hidden ledger and a dead father whose name she couldn't clear alone. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I need answers. About my father. About what really happened. You'll get them. And if you're lying to me, then you'll have wasted your time." Adrian opened the car door, rain still falling steadily. "But you'll be alive to regret it. That's more than you'll get out there alone." Lena grabbed the painting and followed him into the building. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of place where residents paid more per month than she made in a year. A security guard nodded to Adrian without a word. The elevator opened immediately, like it had been waiting. They rode up in silence. Lena watched the floor numbers climb, 15, 20, 25, finally stopping at 34. The penthouse, naturally. Adrian's apartment was exactly what she expected and somehow worse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, furniture that probably cost more than her car, art on the walls that made her conservator's eye twitch with the sheer value. "You're looking at the Rothko," Adrian observed. "I'm looking at about $15 million in stolen property." She pointed at another painting. "That's a Klimt. It was taken from a private collection in Vienna in 2008, and that sculpture is legally purchased, all of it." He shrugged off his wet jacket. "I collect art, Miss Carter. I don't steal it." "You just hang out with people who do." "I hang out with people who find things that were lost." He gestured to a side room. "There's a bathroom through there. Clean clothes in the closet. My assistant sizes. They should fit. Get changed before you catch pneumonia." Lena hesitated. Everything about this was wrong. She should be at a police station. She should be calling her boss, calling Marcus to make sure he was okay. Calling who? She had no one. That was the point of the last 6 years. No connections, no vulnerabilities, nothing for anyone to use against her. And now she was standing in a crime boss's penthouse with a painting worth nothing and everything, and her father's ghost sitting heavy on her chest. 5 minutes, Adrian said. Then we talk. The bathroom was absurd. All glass and chrome and a shower that probably had settings she couldn't pronounce. Lena peeled off her wet clothes, caught sight of herself in the mirror, and barely recognized what she saw. Her dark hair was plastered to her head. Her eyes were too wide, still full of adrenaline. There was a bruise forming on her shoulder where she'd hit the wall in the stairwell. She looked like someone who'd just had their entire life upended. Because she had. The clothes in the closet fit well enough. Black pants, a simple gray sweater, socks that were clean and dry. No shoes that fit, so she kept her damp sneakers. When she came back out, Adrian had changed too. Dark jeans, a black t-shirt that showed more about his build than the suit had. He was at the kitchen counter, which was apparently a thing crime bosses did. Make coffee at midnight after kidnapping conservators. "How do you take it?" he asked. "Black." She set the painting carefully on his dining table. "I need to stabilize this. The moisture damage is already—" "Later." He handed her a mug. "First, tell me everything you found." So she did. The craquelure pattern, the solvent test, the ledger printed on treated paper and sealed under the paint, the photographs she'd taken. Adrian listened without interrupting, his attention absolute. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Dimitri, I need you at the apartment, now." A pause. "No, not tomorrow, now. And bring Elena." He hung up. "Who's Dimitri?" Lena asked. "My head of security. Elena is my accountant. If there's a hidden financial network in this ledger, she'll find it. And you trust her? I trust no one. Adrian took a drink of his coffee, studying her over the rim. But she's been with my family for 20 years, and she's the best forensic accountant in the city. If she's dirty, I'll know soon enough. That's comforting. It's not meant to be. He set down his mug. Tell me about your father. Lena's fingers tightened on her cup. Why? Because you recognize that date in the ledger, which means you've been living with his case for 15 years. I need to know what you know. She didn't want to talk about it. Hadn't talked about it, not really, since the trial. But Adrian was watching her with that same steady attention, and she had the distinct sense that lying would be both obvious and dangerous. My father was a hedge fund manager, she said finally. Small firm in Marion, Illinois. Blue-collar town, nothing fancy. He worked with local businesses, retirement funds, that kind of thing. She stared into her coffee. In 2009, he was arrested for securities fraud. The FBI said he'd been running a Ponzi scheme for years. Hundreds of people lost their savings. But you don't believe that. He swore he was innocent. The words came out harder than she intended. He said someone had used his accounts, his credentials, but he couldn't prove it. The evidence was all digital, all pointing to him. His lawyer was useless. The prosecutor was... She stopped. He hanged himself in his cell 3 weeks before the appeal, leaving you to deal with the aftermath, leaving me to grow up as the daughter of a con man in a town that lost everything. Lena met Adrian's eyes. I changed my name when I turned 18, left Illinois, started over. And I've spent every day since trying to forget. Until tonight. Until tonight. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, Your father wasn't running a Ponzi scheme, Miss Carter. He was a patsy. Someone used him to launder money through a network of legitimate businesses. When he got too close to figuring it out, they burned him and disappeared. How do you know that? Because it's the same thing they tried to do to me. He pulled out his phone, brought up a document, and slid it across the counter to her. 2 weeks ago, my accountant found irregularities in my offshore accounts. Someone has been moving money through my business interests, real estate, shipping, investments, and mixing it with transactions I never authorized. Lena scanned the document. It was dense financial jargon, but the pattern was clear. Legitimate business mixed with something else, something hidden. So you think this ledger is the original record, before they started covering their tracks? Adrian took the phone back, and whoever hid it in that painting was either very smart or very desperate. Or both. Or both. The elevator dinged. Lena jumped, but Adrian just glanced toward the door. That'll be Dimitri. The man who walked in was broad-shouldered and graying, with the kind of face that suggested he'd been in more fights than he'd lost. Behind him came a woman in her 50s, platinum blonde, carrying a laptop bag and radiating the efficient energy of someone who did not appreciate being woken at midnight. This had better be good, Elena said. Adrian gestured at the painting on the table. We found the ledger. Elena's expression went very still. Dimitri moved to the windows, checking the street below with the automatic caution of someone whose job was keeping people alive. Where? Elena asked. Under a painting donated to the Brennan Museum. Miss Carter here is a conservator. She uncovered it. Adrian looked at Lena. And now people are trying to kill her for it. Understandable, Elena muttered, already pulling on gloves and moving toward the painting. This is incredibly stupid and dangerous, and if half of what you've told me is true, Adrian, we're all dead. Your optimism is inspiring. I'm not paid to be optimistic. I'm paid to keep you out of prison. Elena bent over the painting, examining the exposed ledger. Holy hell, this is it. This is the original. Can you decode it? Adrian asked. Given time and access to the account databases? Maybe. She pulled out her phone, started photographing. But if this goes back 15 years like you think... It does, Lena said. My father's case was November 2009. If this ledger was already active, then we're looking at a long-term operation. Multiple front companies, hundreds of transactions. Elena straightened. This isn't just money laundering. This is infrastructure. Someone built an entire shadow network. Question is, Dimitri said from his position by the window, who? Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and something in his expression shifted. What? Lena asked. My Uncle Victor wants a meeting tomorrow morning. Says it's urgent family business. He looked up. He's never requested a meeting at short notice, not in 10 years. That's not suspicious at all, Elena said dryly. He knows. Dimitri's voice was flat. Someone told him about the painting. Or he already knew, Adrian said quietly. And now he's making his move. Lena felt cold. Your uncle? Victor Hale, my mother's brother. He's been my mentor since I took over the family business 8 years ago. Adrian set down his phone with deliberate care. If he's involved in this, then we're in more trouble than I thought, Elena finished. She looked at Lena. How many people saw you uncover that ledger? Just my colleague Marcus, but he's… She stopped. I need to call him. Make sure he's okay. He's fine, Dimitri said. I had someone check. He's at home, shaken but alive. You had someone… Lena stared at Adrian. You've been watching me. I've been watching the museum, Adrian corrected. After Elena found the offshore account issues, I started tracing where the setup might have originated. Your museum received an anonymous donation 3 days ago. A painting with no provenance, no documentation, from a source that couldn't be traced. He paused. That's not normal. So I had Dimitri keep an eye on it. And on me. And on you. Lucky for both of us. Adrian moved to the windows, looking out at the dark water of Lake Michigan. If Victor is involved, this is bigger than I thought. He has access to everything. My accounts, my security, my business operations. If he's been the one setting this up, then your entire organization is compromised, Elena said. And meeting with him tomorrow is suicide. Not meeting with him is suspicious. Adrian turned back. He's expecting me at his estate. 10 a.m., family breakfast, he said. Don't go, Lena said. I have to. If I don't show, he'll know something's wrong. And right now our only advantage is that he doesn't know we have the full ledger. Adrian looked at her. Which means you're coming with me. Excuse me? Victor's estate. Tomorrow morning. You'll come as my guest. That's insane. It's practical. Victor knows you exist by now. Those men at the museum will have reported back. Better for you to be where I can protect you than hiding somewhere he can find you. Adrian's voice was calm, logical. And if he asks about the painting, we'll tell him a version of the truth. You're a conservator. I hired you to examine some pieces from my collection. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, Adrian agreed, but it's our best move. Elena, I need you to start decoding that ledger. Focus on the accounts from 2009. Find out who was moving money through Carlo Moretti's firm. That'll take time. You have 12 hours. Elena looked like she wanted to argue, then just sighed. I'll need access to the painting. Take it. Dimitri, I want security doubled. No one gets into this building without clearance. And find out who donated that painting to the museum. Real identity, not the shell company. On it. Dimitri was already on his phone. Lena watched them work with the efficient coordination of people who'd done this 100 times and felt the full weight of her situation settling on her shoulders. She'd fled a violent attack. She was in the home of a man who was probably a criminal. She was about to walk into a meeting with someone who might have killed her father, and she had no idea how to get out of any of it alive. You should sleep, Adrian said, appearing at her elbow. Guest room is through there. Dimitri will be outside your door all night. I'm not tired. You're exhausted, and tomorrow is going to be difficult. He studied her face. I know this isn't what you wanted, Miss Carter, but you're in it now. The only way out is through. Through what? A breakfast meeting with a potential murderer? Through the truth. Adrian's voice was quiet. About your father, about my family, about whatever network has been operating in the shadows for 15 years. You want answers? They're at Victor's estate. Or a bullet. Possibly both. He almost smiled. But you're still here, which means part of you wants this as much as I do. He was right, and she hated that he was right. Lena looked at the painting on the dining table, at the exposed ledger that Elena was now photographing in painstaking detail, at the evidence that her father had died for, and that someone had tried to destroy tonight. I want to help decode it, she said. The ledger. I'm good with patterns, with details. That's what conservators do. Adrian considered. Can you read financial documents? I can learn. Elena? The accountant looked up. If she's got a good eye for anomalies, I'll take all the help I can get. This is going to be a long night. Then I'll bring coffee, Lena said. Because sleep wasn't going to come anyway. Because her father's name was somewhere in those columns of numbers. Because 15 years of grief and anger and unanswered questions were about to either kill her or give her something she'd stopped believing in years ago. The truth. Adrian nodded once, then moved to help Dmitri with something on his laptop. Elena gestured for Lena to join her at the table. You understand this is dangerous, Elena said quietly as Lena sat down. Not just the meeting tomorrow, all of it. If Adrian's right, and someone in his family is behind this, they've already tried to kill me once tonight, Lena said. I don't think the danger level can get much higher. Oh, sweetheart. Elena's smile was sad. It can always get higher. That's the rule in this world. Then I guess I'm learning the rules. Elena pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop, the numbers from the ledger already being transcribed. Okay, let's start with the basics. See this column here? Those are account codes. Swiss banking system, probably. And these over here? Transaction dates and amounts? Lena leaned in, her conservator's eye immediately picking up patterns in the data. The spacing, the formatting, the way certain codes repeated while others appeared only once. There's a rhythm to it, she murmured, like someone was following a template. Good eye. That's exactly what we're looking for. Whoever set this up was methodical. They had a system. Elena pulled up another screen. Now, if we can match these account codes to real-world businesses, we can trace the money and find out who was really running the operation. Elena glanced at her. Your father's accounts are going to be in here somewhere. Are you ready for that? Lena thought about the last time she'd seen her father. Through glass in a visitor's room that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. He'd looked so small in his orange jumpsuit, so broken. I didn't do it, Lena. I swear to you, I didn't do it. She'd been 17. She'd wanted to believe him. I'm ready, she said. They worked through the night, the three of them, Lena, Elena, and Adrian, when he could pull away from his own investigations. Dmitri came and went, bringing food and coffee and quiet reports about security sweeps and street activity. The numbers began to tell a story. 2009. Multiple transactions through Carlo Moretti's firm in Marion, Illinois. Small amounts spread across dozens of accounts. Pattern matching legitimate client activity. 2011. Network expansion. New firms in Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee. Amounts growing larger. 2014. Offshore accounts activated. Money moving internationally now. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Luxembourg. 2018. Integration with legitimate businesses. Real estate development. Shipping contracts. Everything clean on the surface, dirty underneath. It's beautiful, Elena said around 4 a.m., her voice full of professional admiration and personal disgust. Whoever designed this knew exactly what they were doing. They built it to last decades. And my father? Lena asked. Elena pulled up a specific set of transactions. He was the pilot program. They used his firm to test the system. When it worked, they killed him and moved on. The words were clinical, factual. They still hit like a punch. Did he know? Lena's voice came out barely above a whisper. Did he know what they were using him for? Based on this, Elena studied the data. He figured it out. See these transactions here in October 2009? He was trying to reverse them, sending queries to the banks, filing regulatory reports. She looked up. He fought back. That's why they framed him. Lena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table, willing herself steady. Her father had known, had tried to stop it, and they'd destroyed him for it. Who? She asked. Who was running it in 2009? That's the hard part. Elena pulled up another screen. The accounts are anonymized. Shell companies, proxy agents. But there's a pattern in the authorization codes. Someone high up had to approve every transaction. Victor? Adrian asked. He'd been quiet for the last hour, reading through his own set of documents. Maybe. Or someone with equivalent access. Elena rubbed her eyes. I need more time to crack the encryption on the authorization layer. But if we can get into Victor's personal systems, we'll have proof, Adrian finished. He checked his watch. It's 5 a.m. We have 5 hours until the meeting. Elena, keep working. Lena, you should get some sleep. I'm fine. You're about to walk into a potentially hostile situation. You need to be sharp. He stood. That's not a request. Lena wanted to argue, but her eyes were burning and her head was starting to throb. She'd been running on adrenaline for 8 hours, and it was finally catching up. 2 hours, she said. Then I want to see everything Elena finds. Deal. The guest room was quietly luxurious, all soft grays and comfortable furniture. Lena lay down fully clothed on top of the covers, her mind still spinning with numbers and dates and the image of her father trying to fight back against something too big to see. She didn't think she'd sleep. She woke to daylight and Dmitri knocking on the door. Time to move, Miss Carter. Boss wants you ready in 30 minutes. Lena sat up, disoriented. The clock read 9 a.m. She'd slept for 4 hours. There were clothes laid out on the chair, different from last night. A dress, dark blue, simple but clearly expensive. Shoes that actually fit. A jacket. She showered quickly, dressed, and found herself looking at a stranger in the mirror. The clothes fit perfectly. Made her look like she belonged in Adrian's world. Made her look like someone who could walk into Victor Hale's estate and lie convincingly. When she came out, Adrian was waiting in the living room. He'd changed too, suit again, perfectly tailored, with the kind of confidence that came from wearing armor you couldn't see. Elena found something, he said without preamble. The authorization codes all trace back to a single source, an account that's been active since 2008. Victor's? We don't know yet. The encryption is sophisticated, but there's a physical backup. He handed her a tablet. Victor keeps paper records of his major transactions. Old school, but effective. They're in his study at the estate. And you want me to be... While I'm keeping him occupied at breakfast, yes. Dmitri will be with you. Get in, photograph the records, get out. Adrian's eyes were steady. Can you do that? Lena thought about her father, about the last 15 years, about the fact that she'd stopped being just a conservator the moment she cut that painting free. Yes, she said. Good. Adrian gestured toward the elevator. Then let's go meet the man who might have killed your father. The drive to Victor Hale's estate took 40 minutes, heading north into the wealthy suburbs where Chicago's old money kept their distance from the city. The property was vast, 20 acres behind gates that opened automatically for Adrian's Mercedes. Lena's heart hammered as they drove up the long driveway. The house was stone and glass, modern despite its size, with views of a private lake. He bought this 10 years ago, Adrian said quietly. Right after my mother died. Said he wanted somewhere peaceful. Peaceful for what? Lena asked. That's what we're here to find out. Victor Hale was waiting on the front terrace. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of patrician features that belonged in boardrooms and country clubs. He smiled as they approached, warm and welcoming. Adrian, so good of you to come. His eyes moved to Lena. And you've brought a guest. Victor, this is Lena Carter. She's a conservator. I've hired her to evaluate some pieces from the collection. Charming, Victor extended his hand. Lena shook it, feeling the calluses. Not a businessman's soft grip, something else. Shall we have breakfast? Victor said. I've had Cook prepare something special. They followed him inside, through a marble foyer into a dining room that overlooked the lake. The table was set for 3. Just 3. Lena met Adrian's eyes. He gave the smallest nod. This was the moment. Everything after this would be about staying alive long enough to find the truth. Victor poured coffee. Adrian made small talk, and Lena played her role, the quiet expert, asking questions about the art on Victor's walls. But all she could think about was the study somewhere in this house. The records that might finally prove what her father had died for. And the man across the table, smiling like he hadn't sent armed men to kill her just 10 hours ago. The coffee was excellent. That was the first thing Lena noticed as she sat at Victor Hale's breakfast table, trying to keep her hands from shaking around the delicate porcelain cup. The second thing was how normal everything felt. The morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the smell of fresh pastries, the quiet clink of silverware against plates. Nothing about this felt like sitting across from a man who might have orchestrated her father's death. So, Miss Carter, Victor said, spreading jam on a croissant with the careful precision of someone who enjoyed small rituals. Adrian tells me you're examining his collection. What's your specialty? European oils, mostly. 19th and 20th century. The lie came easier than she expected. But I've worked with everything from Renaissance panels to contemporary installations. Fascinating. I've always admired people who can look at a painting and see the truth beneath. Victor's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Must take a particular kind of vision. The words landed like a warning. Lena forced herself to meet his gaze, to not look away like prey recognizing a predator. It's mostly about patience, she said, and knowing what questions to ask. Indeed, Victor turned to Adrian. I'm glad you brought her. I've been thinking about having my own collection evaluated. Some pieces I acquired years ago, questionable provenance. You know how it is. Adrian's expression remained neutral, but Lena caught the slight tension in his shoulders. I wasn't aware you collected art, Victor. Oh, not seriously. Just a few pieces that caught my eye over the years. Victor took a sip of his coffee. Actually, that's part of why I wanted to meet this morning. There's a family matter we need to discuss. Here it comes, Lena thought. The real reason for this breakfast? The wedding, Victor continued. Your cousin Isabella's wedding next weekend. You remember? Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. She specifically requested you be there, her favorite cousin, she says, though we both know she's angling for a generous gift. Victor chuckled. But it's important to her. Important to the family. With everything that's been happening lately, the business complications, the regulatory scrutiny, we need to present a united front. What kind of complications? Adrian asked. Come now, don't play coy with me. Well, Victor set down his cup. I know about the offshore account irregularities. Elena's been investigating for weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dmitri, standing by the door in his role as silent security, shifted his weight almost imperceptibly. Elena's doing her job, Adrian said calmly. Due diligence on all accounts, standard procedure. Nothing about this is standard, Adrian. Someone is trying to frame you, frame our family, for crimes we didn't commit. And the timing, right before Isabella's wedding, right before several major business deals close? Victor leaned forward. This is coordinated. Someone wants to destroy us. Do you have any idea who? I have theories, none of them pleasant. Victor's gaze flicked to Lena, then back to Adrian. Which is why I need you at this wedding. I need you visible, confident, showing everyone that we're not concerned, that we're still strong. And if I said no, I'd ask why you're suddenly avoiding family obligations, what you're hiding, what you might be guilty of. The threat was gentle, almost fatherly. Don't make me ask those questions publicly, Adrian. Lena watched the exchange like a tennis match, seeing the layers of meaning in every word. Victor wasn't just inviting Adrian to a wedding. He was demanding Adrian step into a trap. The question was whether Adrian knew it. I'll be there, Adrian said, and I'll bring Miss Carter as my guest. Both Victor and Lena turned to stare at him. That's not necessary, Lena started. I insist. Adrian's voice was smooth, controlled. If we're presenting a united front, better to show I'm living my life normally. Dating, even. Takes the focus off the business concerns. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, reassessing. I didn't realize you two were involved. It's new, very new. Adrian reached across the table and took Lena's hand. His grip was warm, firm, and completely unexpected. But I'd like her there, if that's acceptable. The touch sent electricity up Lena's arm. She forced herself not to pull away, to play along with whatever game Adrian was running. Of course, Victor said slowly. The more the merrier. Isabella will be delighted. They finished breakfast with small talk about the wedding details, about family members Lena had never heard of, about business ventures that sounded legitimate but probably weren't. Through it all, Victor watched them both with the attention of someone looking for cracks in a facade. When they finally stood to leave, Victor walked them to the door personally. One more thing, he said, his hand on Adrian's shoulder. The painting that was stolen from the Brennan Museum last night. The one with the anonymous donation. I heard it was quite valuable. Lena's blood ran cold. She felt Adrian's hand find hers again, squeezing once in warning. I hadn't heard, Adrian said. Should I be concerned? Only if it ends up in your collection. Victor smiled. The FBI is investigating. Apparently someone died during the theft. Museum security guard. Tragic. It was a lie. Lena knew it was a lie because she'd been there, because no one had died, because Victor was testing them to see if they'd correct him. Terrible, Adrian said with perfect sympathy. I hope they find who's responsible. Oh, they will. The Bureau is very thorough. Victor released Adrian's shoulder. I'll see you at the wedding, both of you. They walked to the car in silence. Dmitri swept it for tracking devices before letting them inside. Only when they were half a mile down the road did Adrian finally speak. He knows. That we have the painting? Lena asked. That we have something. He's probing, seeing how much we'll admit to. Adrian pulled out his phone. The wedding is a trap. He wants us there so he can control the environment, watch us, maybe eliminate us if we get too close to the truth. Then why did you agree to go? Why bring me? Because refusing would confirm his suspicions. And bringing you... Adrian glanced at her. You're my insurance. He won't make a move at a family wedding with a civilian witness. Too messy, too public. You're using me as a human shield. I'm using you as cover. There's a difference. He typed something on his phone. But you're right that it's dangerous. If you want out, now's the time. Lena thought about her father, about the ledger they decoded through the night, about the fact that Victor Hale had just lied about a death that never happened to see if they'd react. I'm in, she said. But I want the truth. About what happened at breakfast. About what you're not telling me. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then told Dmitri to drive them to a different location. Not his penthouse, somewhere else. They ended up at a warehouse in an industrial area south of downtown, the kind of place where questions weren't asked and security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. Dmitri parked inside and they walked through a maze of storage units to a small office in the back. Elena was there, laptop open, surrounded by printouts and empty coffee cups. Tell me you got something, Adrian said. I got something. You're not going to like it. Elena turned her screen around. The authorization codes from the ledger? They all trace back to an account registered to your mother. The silence was absolute. That's impossible, Adrian said finally. She's been dead for 10 years. I know, but look at the dates. Elena highlighted a series of transactions. The account was open in 2008, when she was alive, but transactions continued after her death. Someone kept using her credentials. Victor, Lena said. Almost certainly. He had access to everything after she died. Power of attorney, estate executor, the works. Elena pulled up another document. But here's the interesting part. There are two sets of transactions. One set matches the criminal activity, the money laundering, the fraud. But there's a second set. Legitimate business, your mother's actual investments and charitable work. Adrian leaned over the screen, reading. Someone was mixing clean and dirty money through her accounts. Exactly. And they were good at it. Good enough that even after her death, the legitimate activity continued. Made it look like an automated trust fund payout system. Elena's voice was grim. Your mother's entire financial legacy has been used as cover for 15 years of criminal enterprise. Lena watched Adrian's face carefully. He'd gone very still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence or breakdown. She couldn't tell which. Did she know? He asked quietly. I don't think so. The pattern suggests the corruption started small, during the last year of her life when she was sick. Whoever did this waited until she was too weak to monitor her own accounts. Elena closed the laptop. I'm sorry, Adrian. Don't be. Just find me proof. He turned to Dmitri. I need everything you can get on Victor's movements in 2008 and 2009. Who he met with, where he traveled, what deals he closed. Already on it. Should have preliminary results by tonight. Good. Adrian looked at Lena. You need to go home. Get some clothes, anything you need for a few days. You're staying at my place until after the wedding. I can take care of myself. Your apartment was broken into 3 hours ago. Professional job, no forced entry. They didn't take anything because there was nothing to take. They were looking for the painting. Adrian's voice was flat, factual. So no, you can't take care of yourself. Not against this. Lena felt the ground shift under her feet, her apartment, her space, the one place she'd felt safe for 6 years. How do you know? Because I've had someone watching it since last night, same as I had someone watching the museum. Adrian's jaw tightened. You're a target now, Miss Carter. The moment you uncovered that ledger, you became someone they need to eliminate. Your only chance is staying close to me until we can end this. By going to a wedding where your uncle will be waiting to kill us both? By going to a wedding where I'll have home field advantage and enough witnesses to keep him from making a move. And while everyone's distracted with champagne and dancing, you and I are going to find the physical evidence we need to bury him. Elena stood up, gathering her papers. This is insane, even for you. You have a better plan? Run. Leave the country. Let the FBI handle it. The FBI won't touch Victor without hard evidence. And by the time we gather it through legal channels, we'll both be dead. Adrian moved toward the door. The wedding is in 6 days. That gives us time to prepare, to plan, to figure out exactly where Victor keeps his records. And if you're wrong, Lena asked, if it's not Victor, then we'll die at a very expensive party. Adrian almost smiled. But I'm not wrong. Everything points to him. The timing, the access, the motive. He wanted control of the family business. My mother stood in his way. So he used her accounts to build his own empire, framed anyone who got too close, and waited for the right moment to eliminate me. Why wait 10 years? Because I was useful, young, legitimate, good at running the clean side of operations. Adrian's expression hardened. But now I'm asking questions. Elena's investigating. You found the ledger. We're too close to the truth, so he's accelerating his timeline. Lena tried to process it all. The break-in, the wedding trap, the revelation about Adrian's mother. Everything was moving too fast, spiraling into something she couldn't control. I need air, she said. She walked out of the office, into the warehouse proper. The space was vast, filled with shipping containers and industrial equipment. Somewhere, water dripped. The smell of oil and metal was overwhelming. Adrian followed her. Of course he did. I know this isn't what you signed up for, he said. I didn't sign up for anything. I was running for my life. And now you're standing in a warehouse planning to infiltrate a society wedding to expose a murderer. Adrian stood beside her, not touching, just present. For what it's worth, you're handling it better than most would. That's a low bar. It's an honest assessment. He was quiet for a moment. Your father, when you found out what really happened, what he tried to do, did it help? Knowing the truth? Lena thought about the ledger, about the transactions showing her father's attempts to fight back, about 15 years of believing he'd been weak, a coward, a criminal. Yes, she said finally. It helped. Doesn't change that he's dead, but at least now I know why. That's all we get sometimes. The why. Adrian turned to face her. I can't promise you'll survive this. I can't promise I will, but I can promise that by the end, you'll know the full truth about what happened to your father, about who gave the orders, who framed him, who decided he was expendable. And then what? Then you decide what to do with that knowledge. Walk away, go to the authorities, disappear. Whatever you need to move forward. His dark eyes were steady, honest in a way that was probably dangerous. But right now, the only way forward is through Victor's estate, through that wedding, through whatever he's planning. Lena looked at this man she'd known for less than 24 hours. A criminal, probably. A killer, possibly. Someone who'd pulled her into his world and was now offering her a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Tell me about the wedding, she said. Everything. If I'm going to play your girlfriend, I need to know what I'm walking into. Adrian's expression shifted, something almost like respect crossing his features. Come back inside. Elena can brief you on the family. You'll need to memorize names, faces, relationships. Isabella's marrying Thomas Castellano. Old money, legitimate business, completely clueless about what his in-laws actually do. How lovely for him. They spent the next 4 hours in that warehouse office. Elena pulling up files and photographs while Adrian provided commentary. The Vieri family was vast, complicated, with branches spread across 3 generations. Some were in the business, Adrian's business, whatever that actually entailed. Others were civilians, kept carefully separate from anything criminal. Isabella was the latter. 26, art history degree from Northwestern, engaged to a banker whose family specialized in municipal bonds. The wedding would be at the family estate, not Victor's house, but an older property that had belonged to Adrian's grandparents. 300 guests, black tie, a string quartet, and a 12-piece band. It's going to be like a reunion, Elena said. Every family member, every business associate, every friend and hanger-on who wants to be seen with the Vieris. Which means witnesses, Adrian added, and chaos. Good cover for moving around, asking questions, accessing areas we're not supposed to be in. Victor will have security, Dmitri said. He'd been reviewing the estate layout on his own laptop. Private firm, probably 20 personnel. Plus, Chicago PD is usually present for events this size, just to keep the peace. Can we get someone on the inside? Lena asked. All three of them turned to look at her. I mean, you must have people, she continued, on your payroll, or who owe you favors. Can we get one of them hired as catering staff or security? Adrian smiled slowly. That's actually brilliant. Dmitri? I know a guy. Works event security, very reliable. Dmitri was already making notes. I can have him placed by tomorrow. Do it. And I want surveillance on Victor's movements between now and the wedding. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to. They worked until dark, building a plan that felt equal parts Ocean's 11 and Suicide Mission. Lena would need a dress. Something appropriate for a society wedding, but flexible enough to move in. Adrian would need to play the devoted nephew, all smiles and family loyalty, while watching Victor's every move. And when the moment came, when everyone was distracted by the ceremony or the reception, they'd slip away and search Victor's study. He keeps his real records at the family estate, Elena explained. Physical files, old-school filing cabinets. He doesn't trust digital for anything truly important. How do you know? Lena asked. Because I used to work for him, before I worked for Adrian. That's how this whole family operates. Everyone circulates through different roles, different positions, keeps loyalty up and makes it harder for outsiders to infiltrate. Elena's smile was thin. Also means I know exactly where his study is and what kind of lock he uses. Can you pick it? Adrian asked. No, but I bet Miss Carter can. Lena blinked. Excuse me? Conservators work with delicate mechanisms all the time, right? Old frames, antique locks on museum cases? Elena raised an eyebrow. It's basically the same principle. It's really not, but you've done it before, Adrian said. It wasn't a question. Lena thought about the storage facility in Marion, the one where her father's personal effects had been kept after his death. The one she'd broken into when she was 19, desperate to find something, anything, that proved his innocence. She taught herself to pick locks from YouTube videos in 3 weeks of practice. She'd found nothing but memories that night, old files, photographs, a briefcase with his initials. Nothing that helped. I've done it, she admitted, but I'm rusty, and I've never done it under pressure with people trying to kill me. There's a first time for everything. Adrian checked his watch. It's 8 o'clock. We should get you settled at my place, get some food, try to sleep. Tomorrow, we'll start real preparation. They left the warehouse in 2 cars, Adrian and Lena in the Mercedes, Dmitri and Elena following in a black SUV. The drive back to Adrian's building took them through neighborhoods that shifted from industrial to residential to wealthy, with the smooth inevitability of Chicago's geography. Lena watched the city slide past, neon signs and streetlights blurring together. 24 hours ago, she'd been a conservator, a nobody, someone who kept her head down and her past buried. Now she was planning a heist at a society wedding to expose a criminal empire. You're quiet, Adrian said. I'm thinking about how insane this is. Fair. He navigated through traffic with the easy confidence of someone who'd been driving these streets his whole life. For what it's worth, you're good at this. At what? Being terrified? At adapting. At thinking on your feet. He glanced at her. Most people would have fallen apart by now. You're still standing. I'm still standing because I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You're choosing to fight instead of run. Adrian's voice was serious. That takes a particular kind of courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. They pulled into the underground garage of Adrian's building. The security was tighter now. Dmitri had clearly called ahead. 2 guards checked the car before waving them through. Another guard rode the elevator up with them. Adrian's penthouse looked different at night. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed Chicago sparkling in the darkness, light stretching to the horizon. It was beautiful in an overwhelming way, the kind of view that reminded you how small you were. "Are you hungry?" Adrian asked, shrugging off his jacket. "I don't know." Lena realized she hadn't thought about food in hours. "Maybe? I'll order something." He pulled out his phone, then paused. "What do you like?" "Anything's fine." "That's not an answer." "Thai food," she said. "Spicy. And spring rolls." Adrian nodded and made the call. While he ordered, Lena walked to the windows, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there was her apartment, already violated. Somewhere was the Brennan Museum, probably crawling with investigators. Somewhere was Victor's estate, waiting. And somewhere, maybe in a filing cabinet, maybe in a safe, maybe in Victor's own handwriting, was the proof they needed to end this. "Food will be here in 30 minutes, Adrian said, joining her at the window. "Elena sent over the files on the family. You should review them tonight. Memorize as much as you can." "I know. I will." Lena kept staring at the lights. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." "Why do you really want to take Victor down? It's not just about the money laundering or your mother's accounts." She turned to face him. "There's something personal in this for you." Adrian was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, "When I was 16, my mother died of cancer. She fought it for 2 years, surgery, chemo, radiation, everything. Victor was with her through all of it, holding her hand, managing her care, handling the business so I could focus on school." He paused, and Lena could see the memory playing behind his eyes. "After she died, he told me something. He said she'd been worried about the business, about what would happen to me if something went wrong. So she'd set up protections, trusts, legal structures, financial safeguards." Adrian's jaw tightened. "He said she did it because she loved me, because she wanted me to be safe. But she didn't." "No, she died thinking she'd protected me. And Victor used her death, used her accounts, used her memory to build his own empire." The anger in his voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. He stood at her funeral and gave a eulogy about family and loyalty. And the whole time he was stealing from her. Lena felt something shift in her understanding of Adrian. He wasn't just a crime boss protecting his territory. He was a son avenging his mother. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. Just help me finish this." He moved away from the window. "The guest room is set up for you. Bathroom has everything you need. Tomorrow morning, Dimitri is taking you shopping for a dress and anything else you'll need for the wedding." "I can buy my own dress. Not one that costs what it needs to cost to fit in at this wedding. This is a world where women judge each other by designer labels and jewelry. You need to look like you belong." Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. "Let me handle it. I don't like being dependent on you." "I know, but you are, at least for now, so let's make it work." He headed toward his bedroom, then stopped. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for staying, for helping." He met her eyes. "I know you could have walked away at any point. The fact that you haven't, it matters." He disappeared into his room before she could respond. Lena stood in the living room alone, surrounded by expensive furniture and stolen art, and the weight of decisions she couldn't take back. Through the windows, Chicago glittered indifferently. She pulled out her phone and opened her photo gallery. There, buried in an album she kept backed up but rarely looked at, was a picture of her father. Taken at her high school graduation, months before everything fell apart. He was smiling, proud, his arm around her shoulders. "I didn't do it, Lena. I swear to you, I didn't do it." "I know, Dad," she whispered to the empty room. "I know now." The food arrived. They ate in near silence, Adrian working on his laptop while Lena reviewed the family files Elena had sent. Names and faces blurred together. Isabella Vieri, the bride. Thomas Castellano, the groom. Aunts and uncles and cousins, business associates and family friends. And Victor Hale, at the center of it all. Silver-haired and charming in every photograph, his hand on shoulders, his smile warm and paternal. He looked like someone's favorite uncle, not a killer. That was probably the point. Lena studied his face until she could see past the smile, until she could see the calculation in his eyes, The way he positioned himself in every photo to be at the center, the most important person in the frame. Find something? Adrian asked. He likes control. Every picture, he's orchestrating it somehow, bringing people together, standing in the middle, making sure he's the focus. That's Victor. He doesn't just want power. He wants everyone to acknowledge it. Adrian closed his laptop. Which makes the wedding perfect. He'll be playing host, making speeches, being the center of attention. He won't be able to resist. And while he's distracted, we find what we need and get out. Adrian stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Lena retreated to the guest room, but sleep was impossible. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through plans and contingencies and 1,000 ways this could go wrong. Sometime after midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Nice dress rehearsal at breakfast, but you can't act for shit. See you at the wedding. V. Her heart stopped. She screenshot the message and immediately sent it to Adrian. His response came 30 seconds later. Don't reply. He's testing you, trying to make you panic. It's working. Good. Use it. Scared people make fewer mistakes. Lena didn't know if that was true, but she held on to it anyway. She deleted Victor's message, blocked the number, and forced herself to breathe slowly. 6 days until the wedding. 6 days to prepare, to plan, to become someone who could walk into a trap and come out alive. She must have slept eventually because she woke to sunlight and Dimitri knocking on her door. Up and at 'em, Miss Carter. We've got shopping to do. The next few days blurred together. Dimitri took her to a boutique on Oak Street where the cheapest dress cost more than her monthly rent. The saleswoman was the kind of person who could smell desperation and uncertainty, but Dimitri's presence, and more importantly, his unlimited budget, smoothed everything over. Lena tried on 12 dresses before finding one that worked. Deep emerald green, fitted but not restrictive, with a neckline that was elegant without being conservative. The kind of dress that said money and confidence, and I belong here. She hated how good it looked on her. Perfect, Dimitri said. We'll take it. And shoes, jewelry, a clutch bag. This is too much, boss's orders. Besides, you'll need to look the part. He gestured for the saleswoman to ring everything up. Trust me, showing up to a Vieri wedding in department store clothes would be worse than showing up naked. They bought shoes that pinched and jewelry that sparkled and a handbag so small it could barely fit her phone. Lena felt like she was being dressed for a part in a play she hadn't auditioned for. Back at Adrian's penthouse, she practiced walking in the heels. Elena coached her on small talk, on how to hold her wine glass, on the subtle social signals of Chicago's wealthy elite. Don't be too friendly, Elena advised. These people respect reserve. Answer questions, but don't volunteer information. Smile, but not too much. And for the love of everything, don't mention your actual job unless someone asks directly. What do I say I do? You're an art consultant. Private clients, confidential projects. It's vague enough to be believable and specific enough to stop follow-up questions. Adrian drilled her on the estate layout. Dimitri taught her basic counter-surveillance, how to spot a tail, how to lose one, how to know if someone was watching. And late at night, alone in her borrowed room, Lena practiced picking locks with a kit Dimitri had provided. The mechanisms were different from what she remembered, more complex, but the principle was the same. Feel for the pins. Apply gentle pressure. Listen for the click. By day 3, she could open a standard door lock in under a minute. By day 5, Adrian declared her ready. You're not going to be perfect, he said during their final briefing, but you're good enough to pull this off. That's reassuring. It should be. Perfect is suspicious. Good enough with a few rough edges? That's real. Adrian pulled up a diagram of Victor's study on his laptop. The filing cabinet we need is here, against the north wall. 4 drawers, locked. You'll need to pick the lock on the study door, then the lock on the cabinet. Estimated time, 3 to 5 minutes if everything goes right. And if it doesn't? Dimitri will cause a distraction, a small fire in the kitchen maybe, something to pull security away. Adrian looked up. But ideally, we get in and out without anyone noticing we're gone. During my own cousin's wedding reception, while I'm supposed to be celebrating, Adrian's smile was grim. Victor will expect me to play the dutiful nephew. What he won't expect is for you to be the one doing the actual work. Because I'm just the girlfriend, the civilian, not a threat. Exactly. Adrian closed his laptop. The wedding is tomorrow. We leave at 2. The ceremony starts at 4. Reception immediately after. He met her eyes. Last chance to walk away, Lena. After tomorrow, there's no going back. We'll either have the evidence we need or we'll be dead. Those are the only options. Lena thought about her father, about his last words to her through prison glass, about 15 years of shame and anger and unanswered questions, about the fact that she'd finally found something worth risking everything for. I'm in, she said. Let's finish this. Adrian nodded once, and for just a moment she saw something cross his face. Respect, maybe, or recognition. The acknowledgement that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. That night, Lena didn't sleep at all. She stood at the window of her guest room, looking out at Chicago, thinking about all the choices that had led her here. The decision to become a conservator, the move to this city, the curiosity that made her examine that painting instead of just logging it and moving on. Every small choice building to this moment. Tomorrow, she would put on that expensive green dress and walk into Victor Hale's world. She would smile and make small talk and pretend to be someone she wasn't, and then she would break into his study and steal the evidence that would either free her or kill her. It was terrifying. It was also the most alive she'd felt in 15 years. At dawn, Adrian knocked on her door. You awake? I never slept. Good. Neither did I. He was already dressed in running clothes. Come on, let's go clear our heads before this gets real. They ran along the lakefront trail as the sun came up, neither speaking, just moving through the cold morning air. Lena's lungs burned. Her legs ached, but the rhythm of it, step after step after step, steadied something inside her. When they got back to the penthouse, Dmitri was waiting with coffee and a final equipment check. Lockpicks. A small camera disguised as a compact mirror. An earpiece so she could hear Adrian if something went wrong. One more thing, Adrian said. He handed her a small knife in a leg sheath. Just in case. Lena stared at it. I don't know how to use this. Point the sharp end at anyone who tries to hurt you. That's all you need to know. She strapped it to her thigh, the weight of it foreign and somehow comforting. By noon, Elena arrived to help with hair and makeup. By 1, Lena was standing in front of the mirror in that green dress, looking at a version of herself she barely recognized. Elegant, polished, dangerous. You look good, Adrian said from the doorway. He was in his tux now, black and perfectly fitted, looking every inch the wealthy heir. I look like I'm going to rob someone. That's because you are. He offered his arm. Ready? Lena took a breath, thought about her father one last time, then nodded. Ready. They walked out of the penthouse together, into the elevator, through the lobby, into the waiting car. Chicago passed by outside the windows, familiar and foreign at the same time. And with every mile that brought them closer to Victor's estate, Lena felt the old version of herself falling away. The scared girl from Marion, the quiet conservator who kept her head down. She was someone new now, someone who could look a killer in the eye and smile, someone who could walk into a trap and maybe, just maybe, walk back out. The wedding was in 4 hours. Everything after that was blood and truth and the question of whether either of them would survive long enough to see both. The Vieri family estate looked like something out of a magazine spread on generational wealth. Stone walls, manicured gardens stretching toward a private lake, and enough land that you couldn't see the neighbors. The driveway alone was probably a quarter mile, lined with ancient oak trees that created a tunnel of shadow and filtered sunlight. Lena's hands were sweating inside her clutch as Adrian's Mercedes joined the procession of luxury vehicles. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, the occasional Tesla for the environmentally conscious millionaire. They all crawled toward the main house at a pace that suggested no one here was ever in a hurry. Breathe, Adrian said quietly. His hand found hers between them, warm and steady. You've got this. I'm about to commit a felony at your cousin's wedding. Technically, several felonies, breaking and entering, theft, possibly fraud, depending on how the prosecutor wants to spin it. He squeezed her hand once. But who's counting? Despite everything, Lena almost laughed. You're insane. That's been established. Adrian pulled up to the valet stand where young men in matching uniforms waited to park the endless stream of cars. Remember, you're my girlfriend. We met at an art gallery 2 months ago. You're here because you wanted to see the estate's collection. Keep it simple. Keep it vague. And if someone asks about my family? Dead parents, raised by an aunt in Oregon, moved to Chicago for work. Sad, but not traumatic enough to derail dinner conversation. He'd created the backstory with Elena 3 days ago, practiced until it felt almost real. Most people won't ask. They'll be too busy talking about themselves. The valet opened Lena's door. She stepped out onto gravel that probably cost more per square foot than her apartment's flooring and immediately felt the weight of 100 eyes. Other guests were arriving, emerging from their expensive cars in their expensive clothes, and every single one of them was assessing everyone else. Adrian came around and offered his arm. She took it, grateful for something solid to hold on to. Adrian! A woman in a pale pink dress was waving from the entrance, mid-50s, blonde, with the kind of jewelry that required its own insurance policy. You made it! Aunt Sophia. Adrian kissed her cheek. You look beautiful. This is Lena Carter. Lena, my Aunt Sophia, Isabella's mother. So lovely to meet you. Sophia's smile was warm, but her eyes were sharp, cataloging every detail of Lena's appearance. Adrian didn't mention he was bringing someone. It's new, Lena said, channeling Elena's coaching. But he spoke so highly of Isabella I couldn't resist. Well, come in, come in. The ceremony's starting in 20 minutes. I've got you both seated in the third row, family section, of course. Sophia was already moving, expecting them to follow. Victor's around somewhere, probably terrorizing the caterers. You know how he gets at these things. They followed her through the entrance hall, which was more museum than home. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and paintings that made Lena's conservator brain scream with questions about humidity control and UV exposure. Everything was perfect, pristine, displayed like artifacts in a collection that included the people who lived here. Your aunt seems nice, Lena murmured as Sophia disappeared to greet other arrivals. She's fine, completely clueless about the business, which is probably why she's still alive. Adrian guided her through clusters of guests, nodding to people, exchanging brief greetings. Third row means we're visible, but not too close to Victor. Good and bad. How's that good? We can leave during the reception without him noticing immediately. If we were front row, he'd clock our absence in seconds. They made their way to the gardens where the ceremony was taking place. White chairs arranged in neat rows, an arbor draped in flowers that probably cost more than a car, and Lake Michigan glittering in the distance. It was beautiful in that aggressive way that money could buy. Every detail perfect, every element curated. Lena spotted Victor immediately. He was near the arbor, talking to an older man in a suit that screamed federal law enforcement. Both were laughing, casual, comfortable. Who's that with Victor? She asked. Adrian's expression tightened. FBI. Special Agent Marcus Webb handles organized crime for the Chicago field office. He's at the wedding? Victor likes to keep his enemies close, or his friends, depending on how you look at it. Adrian steered her toward their seats. Webb's been investigating the family for years. Never found anything solid, and Victor makes sure to invite him to every major event, just to show he's got nothing to hide. That's bold. That's Victor. They sat. More guests filtered in, the seats filling with people who all seemed to know each other, who moved through the space with the casual entitlement of those who'd been born to wealth and never questioned it. Lena recognized some faces from Elena's briefing files, business associates, distant cousins, the governor's wife. There's Isabella, Adrian said, nodding toward a young woman near the house. She was stunning in the way brides often were, her dress a confection of white silk and lace, her dark hair swept up to show the family diamonds at her throat. She was laughing at something a bridesmaid said, radiant and completely unaware that her wedding was being used as cover for corporate espionage. Or worse. The string quartet began playing. Everyone stood. The ceremony was starting. Lena watched Isabella walk down the aisle on her father's arm. Another uncle, she thought, though she'd lost track of the family tree, and felt a strange disconnect. This was a real wedding, real people making real vows, and in a few hours she and Adrian would be breaking into Victor's study while everyone else danced and drank champagne. The ceremony itself was traditional, religious, in that vague way that wealthy people often were. The priest talked about love and commitment and forever. Thomas looked genuinely happy. Isabella cried during her vows. It was all very normal, very sweet, and it made what Lena was about to do feel even more surreal. "You okay?" Adrian whispered. "Just thinking about how many people are going to hate us when this is over. Only if we get caught. That's not comforting. It's honest." The priest pronounced them husband and wife. Everyone applauded. Isabella and Thomas kissed and walked back up the aisle together, beaming, and the guests began filtering toward the reception tent that had been set up on the east lawn. The tent was massive, climate-controlled, with round tables draped in silk and centerpieces that could have fed a family for a week. A band was setting up at one end. Waiters circulated with champagne and appetizers that Lena couldn't identify, but that tasted expensive. "Adrian!" Victor appeared beside them like a ghost, all smiles and warm familiarity. "And Miss Carter, you both look wonderful." "Victor." Adrian's voice was perfectly calibrated, friendly but not effusive. "Beautiful ceremony." Sophia outdid herself. "Though between you and me, I think Isabella's dress cost more than my first car." Victor's laugh was easy, practiced. His eyes on Lena were not. "Are you enjoying yourself, Miss Carter?" "It's lovely. The estate is incredible." "Well, my father built it in the 60s. Old world craftsmanship. You don't see it anymore." He gestured vaguely at the house. "Adrian tells me you're an art consultant. I'd love to show you the collection later, get your professional opinion on a few pieces." It was a test, a trap, an invitation she couldn't refuse without seeming suspicious. "I'd be honored," Lena said. "Wonderful. After dinner, perhaps." Victor's smile widened. "Adrian, your mother would have loved this. She always said Isabella would make a beautiful bride." The mention of Adrian's mother was deliberate, a needle finding its mark. Lena felt Adrian's arm tense under her hand. "She would have," Adrian agreed, his voice level. "She always loved family celebrations." That she did. Victor's eyes went distant for just a moment, and Lena saw something flicker there. Regret? Guilt? It was gone before she could identify it. "Well, I should make the rounds, but we'll talk later." He disappeared into the crowd, already greeting the next cluster of guests. "He knows," Lena breathed. "He suspects. Different thing." Adrian guided her toward their assigned table. "But the offer to show you the collection, that's him keeping us close. He wants to watch us." "So what do? "We play along. We have dinner, we make small talk, we wait for our moment." He pulled out her chair. "And we don't panic." Their table included two other couples, Adrian's second cousins and their spouses. The conversation was the kind of polished small talk that wealthy people excelled at. Real estate markets, vacation homes in Tuscany, someone's disappointing experience with a new restaurant that had only one Michelin star. Lena contributed when necessary, smiled when appropriate, and let the conversation wash over her while her mind raced. The study was on the second floor, West Wing. Victor would be occupied with the reception for at least another hour, probably two. The security Dmitri had mentioned would be monitoring the grounds, but inside the house would be less guarded. Most of the family knew the code to disable the alarms, and Victor wouldn't want to explain to Isabella why her wedding required armed guards indoors. The window was small, but it existed. Dinner was served in courses that seemed to multiply. Lena lost count after the fourth plate. Everything was delicious and completely wasted on her. She could barely taste anything past the adrenaline that was making her hands shake every time she reached for her wine glass. "You're doing great," Adrian murmured during a lull while the plates were being cleared. "Just keep breathing." "I feel like everyone's staring at me." "They're not. They're staring at each other, trying to figure out who's sleeping with whom and whose business is failing." He took a drink of his wine. "You're invisible to these people. You're just another girlfriend I'll probably discard in 6 months." "That's depressing. But useful." He checked his watch. "Speeches start in 10 minutes. After that, dancing. That's when we move." Lena's heart was hammering now. This was real. This was happening. The speeches were exactly what you'd expect. Victor gave a toast about family and tradition. Isabella's father welcomed Thomas to the family. Someone told an embarrassing story about Isabella's childhood that got laughs. Through it all, Lena's leg bounced under the table, nervous energy she couldn't quite contain. Adrian's hand found her knee, steadying. "Almost time." The band started playing. The newlyweds took their first dance. Then the parents joined them, then the wedding party, Then everyone else. The floor filled with couples swaying to something classical that Lena didn't recognize. "Come on," Adrian said, standing. "We should dance. Look normal." He led her onto the floor, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. They moved together in a way that surprised her. He was a good dancer, confident in his movements, and she found herself following his lead without thinking about it. "There," he said quietly, his mouth near her ear. "Victor's at the bar, surrounded by people. Dimitri just texted. Our guy on the inside disabled the camera on the West Wing staircase. We have a 10-minute window. What if someone sees us leaving? Then we're getting some air, looking at the art. Newlyweds make everyone nostalgic and sentimental." He spun her gently, bringing them to the edge of the floor. On the next song transition, we slip out. "You head upstairs, I'll run interference if anyone asks questions. Adrian, you can do this." His dark eyes held hers, certain in a way she didn't feel. "I trust you." The song ended. There was a pause, applause, then the band launched into something upbeat. Couples were trading partners. People were leaving the floor for drinks. "Now," Adrian said. They separated naturally, Adrian heading toward a group of relatives while Lena made her way toward the house. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The clutch in her hand felt impossibly heavy, with the lock picks and camera hidden inside. The house was quieter than the tent. Most of the staff focused on the reception. Lena slipped through the main hall, heading for the West Wing staircase. Her heels clicked on marble, impossibly loud in the silence. She passed a server carrying champagne, nodded politely, kept walking. The staircase appeared on her left, exactly where Elena's layout had shown it. Lena glanced around, no one watching, no cameras visible, and started climbing. Second floor. The hallway stretched in both directions, doors on either side. Victor's study was the third door on the right. Lena's hands were shaking as she pulled out the lockpicks. The door handle was old-fashioned, ornate, the kind of lock that was probably easier to pick than modern ones. She'd practiced this. She could do this. The pick slid in. She felt for the pins, applied pressure, listened. Nothing. Her breathing was too loud. Her hands were sweating. The pins weren't catching the way they should. "Come on," she thought desperately. "Come on! Click!" The lock turned. The door opened. Lena slipped inside Victor's study and closed the door behind her, her whole body trembling with relief and terror. The room was exactly what she expected. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, a massive desk with a view of the lake. And along the north wall, just as Elena had described, a 4-drawer filing cabinet. She moved quickly, pulling out the camera disguised as a compact mirror. Started with the desk. Papers scattered across the surface. A laptop closed. Family photographs in silver frames. She photographed everything, methodical, the way she'd been trained to document conservation work. Then the filing cabinet. The lock was different from the door, more modern, and her hands were shaking worse now. The first pick slipped. The second caught, but wouldn't turn. The earpiece in her ear crackled to life. "Lena." Adrian's voice, quiet but urgent. "Victor just left the tent, heading toward the house. You have maybe 2 minutes." Panic flooded through her. 2 minutes. She still had 3 more drawers to photograph. "Almost done," she whispered back, though it was a lie. She abandoned the lock-picking and tried the drawers. The top one was unlocked. Administrative files, business correspondence. Nothing useful. The second drawer was locked tight. The third opened. Inside were files organized with obsessive precision, account statements, transaction records. And there, in a folder labeled Legacy Trust 2008, were her father's name and a dozen others. Lena's vision tunneled. This was it. This was the proof. She pulled out her camera and started photographing, hands moving on autopilot, flipping through pages as fast as she dared. Account numbers matched what they'd found in the ledger, names of shell companies, transfer dates. And there, at the bottom of the file, authorization forms signed by Adrian's mother, except the signatures were wrong. Lena had seen enough forgeries in her conservation work to recognize one. The pressure was inconsistent, the loops slightly off. Someone had copied Victoria Vieri's signature, badly, and used it to authorize millions in fraudulent transactions. "Lena!" Adrian's voice again, more urgent now. "He's in the house. Move!" She photographed the last page, shoved the file back, closed the drawer. Her hands were clumsy with adrenaline. The camera almost slipped from her grip. Footsteps in the hallway. Coming closer. Lena looked around desperately. No back exit. The windows overlooked a 2-story drop. The only way out was through the door, and Victor was coming from that direction. She was trapped. The footsteps stopped outside the study. The door handle began to turn. Lena did the only thing she could think of. She yanked open the second drawer of the filing cabinet, the one she hadn't checked yet, and pulled out a file at random. Then she turned to face the door, forcing her expression into something approximating calm curiosity. Victor stepped inside. For a moment, they just stared at each other. He looked different than he had at the reception. The warm uncle facade had cracked, showing something harder underneath. "Miss Carter." His voice was pleasant, conversational. "I believe you're in the wrong room." "I'm so sorry." Lena held up the file, hoping her hands weren't shaking visibly. "Adrian said you wanted to show me the art collection. I thought this might be where you kept the provenance records. The door was unlocked, and The door was unlocked. Victor stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "How interesting. I could have sworn I locked it this morning." Lena's mouth went dry. "Maybe you forgot?" "I never forget." He moved closer, and Lena had to fight every instinct not to back away. "You know what I think, Miss Carter? I think you're a very talented liar. I think you've been lying since the moment Adrian brought you to breakfast. And I think you're holding something that doesn't belong to you. It's just provenance records. Show me." There was no way out. Lena handed over the file, her mind racing for an explanation, an excuse, anything that would get her out of this room alive. Victor opened the file, scanned the contents. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, became more dangerous. "Do you know what this is?" he asked quietly. "No. This is a record of every property I've sold in the last 10 years. Completely legitimate business transactions." He closed the file. "Nothing interesting? Nothing incriminating? Certainly nothing worth breaking into my study to photograph." He knew. He knew everything. "I wasn't photographing." "Don't insult me." Victor set the file on his desk with deliberate care. "I've known since the moment you walked into that museum that someone would come looking for that painting. What I didn't know was whether Adrian was involved or if you were working alone." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The ledger, Miss Carter. The one you found hidden under a rather unfortunate portrait. The one that's been missing from my possession for 15 years. His smile was cold. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice when it suddenly surfaced?" Lena's hand moved to the knife strapped to her thigh, hidden under her dress. She didn't know how to use it, but she'd die before she let him know that. "I noticed you reaching for a weapon," Victor said calmly. "I'd advise against it. My security team is right outside, and unlike you, they actually know how to kill people efficiently. Adrian knows I'm here." "I'm sure he does, and he's currently being detained by Agent Webb, who has some very interesting questions about offshore accounts and money laundering." Victor moved to the window, looking out at the reception still in full swing below. "You see, I've been very careful over the years, very patient, building my case against Adrian piece by piece, making sure that when everything collapsed, he'd be the one holding the bag. He's your nephew. He's a liability. His mother made him soft, sentimental. He actually believes in loyalty, in family, in all those comforting lies people tell themselves." Victor turned back to her. "But you're different. You survived your father's downfall, changed your name, rebuilt your life, stayed quiet for 15 years. That takes discipline, intelligence." "My father was innocent." "Your father was weak. He discovered my operation, and instead of joining it, he tried to expose it, made himself a problem that needed solving." Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, discussing her father's murder like a business decision. "But you're not weak, are you, Miss Carter? You're standing in my study with evidence you can't use, facing a threat you can't escape, and you're still calculating angles." He was right, and she hated that he was right. Her mind was already working through possibilities. The window was too high. The door was blocked. But the camera in her clutch had evidence if she could just get it to someone who could use it. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to work for me." Victor sat on the edge of his desk, casual. "You have skills I can use. An eye for detail, the ability to move in circles that might look twice at someone like me. And you have motivation, revenge against the system that destroyed your father, even if you're directing that revenge at the wrong target. You killed him. I removed a problem. There's a difference. He studied her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that camera. You're going to walk back down to the reception and tell Adrian that you found nothing useful. And in 6 months, after everything has settled, you're going to come work for my organization. And if I refuse, then you'll die tonight. Adrian will die tonight. And Elena and Dmitri and anyone else who's helped you will die by the end of the week. Victor's smile never wavered. I've cleaned up messes before, Miss Carter. I'm very good at it. Lena's hand tightened on the clutch. The camera inside held proof of everything. The forged signatures, the account records, her father's name in Victor's own files. It was enough to destroy him if she could get it out of this room. I need time to think, she said. You have until I count to 10. Victor checked his watch. 1. Lena's mind raced. The knife was useless. She'd be dead before she could close the distance. The window was suicide. The door. 2. The door. Unlocked from the inside. If she could just get through it, if she could reach the stairs. 3. Adrian was with the FBI agent. Dmitri was somewhere on the grounds. She was alone. 4. Lena dropped the clutch. It hit the floor and popped open, spilling lipstick and the compact camera across Victor's expensive rug. Oops, she said. Victor's eyes flicked down for just a second. A fraction of a second. Lena ran. She hit the door at full speed, yanked it open, and burst into the hallway. Behind her, Victor was shouting. Heavy footsteps. Security. Running toward the noise. She kicked off her heels and sprinted for the stairs in her bare feet, the knife digging into her thigh with every step. The marble was cold and slippery. She nearly fell twice. Behind her, multiple sets of footsteps. Victor's voice, calm and commanding. Stop her. Don't let her reach the reception. Lena hit the main floor and veered left, away from the tent, toward the east wing where Elena had said there was a service entrance. If she could just reach outside, reach people, reach... Someone grabbed her from behind. She twisted, bringing her elbow back hard into something solid, heard a grunt of pain. The grip loosened. She ran harder. The service entrance appeared ahead, a plain door, staff only, and beyond it the gardens and the lake, and maybe, possibly, a chance. Lena hit the door and burst outside into twilight and cool air. She ran toward the lake, toward the dark, toward anywhere that wasn't here. Behind her, shouts. The sound of radios crackling. She'd never make it. There was too much open ground, too many of them, and she had no idea where she was going, but the camera was still in Victor's study, evidence scattered across his floor, and Adrian was standing by the water's edge, alone, his back to her. Lena changed direction, stumbling over the manicured grass toward him. Adrian! He turned, saw her, and in the failing light she saw his expression shift from surprise to understanding to something harder. Run! She gasped when she reached him. Victor knows everything. I know. Adrian's voice was strange, flat. I've always known. Lena's world tilted. What? My uncle has been setting me up for years, moving money, creating paper trails, building a case. Adrian's jaw was tight. I've been building one against him too, gathering evidence, working with the FBI, waiting for him to make a mistake. The Agent Webb, is arresting Victor right now. Dmitri led them to the study after you left. The camera you dropped? They have it, along with the files you photographed. Adrian finally looked at her, really looked at her. You did it, Lena. You got the evidence we needed. She couldn't process it. Her mind was still in survival mode, still running, still fighting. I don't understand. I couldn't tell you. If Victor suspected you knew I was working with the FBI, he would have killed you immediately. Adrian's voice was rough. But you running, fighting back, dropping that camera like it was an accident, that was perfect. He thought he won, thought he'd cornered you. And while he was gloating, federal agents were surrounding the house. Lena's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the grass, shaking, her adrenaline crashing all at once. Adrian knelt beside her. I'm sorry. I know I should have warned you, prepared you, but I could have died. Yes. He didn't try to soften it. You could have. And I'm sorry I put you in that position. But you're alive, and Victor's finished, and your father's name can be cleared. The words came out barely above a whisper. You really did it. We did it. Adrian offered his hand. Come on. There's someone you should meet. Agent Webb was waiting back at the house, Victor in handcuffs between two federal agents. The party had devolved into chaos, guests being questioned, family members demanding answers, Isabella crying in her wedding dress while Thomas looked shell-shocked. Miss Carter, Webb extended his hand. That was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid, but effective. We got everything we needed. My father, Carlo Moretti's case will be reviewed. With this evidence, I'd expect a full exoneration within 6 months. Webb glanced at Adrian. Your testimony will help too. You understand what cooperating means? I understand. Adrian's voice was steady. Whatever it takes. Lena watched Victor being led away, his perfect facade finally cracked. He caught her eye as he passed, and for just a moment she saw rage there. Pure, undiluted hatred. Then he was gone, loaded into a federal vehicle, and it was over. The night blurred after that. Statements to the FBI. Concerned relatives asking questions. Elena appearing with blankets and coffee that Lena couldn't taste. Dimitri confirming that Marcus from the museum was safe, that her apartment was being secured, that everything was being handled. It was dawn before they finally left, driving back to Chicago in Adrian's Mercedes while the sky turned pink and gold over Lake Michigan. What happens now? Lena asked. Her voice was hoarse from talking to agents. Now Victor goes to trial. The organization he built gets dismantled, and everyone who was involved, Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They face justice. Real justice. And you? Cooperating witness has its advantages. I'll probably avoid prison. Might even keep some of the legitimate businesses. He glanced at her. But my life as I knew it is over. Everything changes from here. Lena thought about that. About change. About how her entire world had shifted in less than a week. Good, she said finally. It should change. Adrian almost smiled. You're terrifying, you know that? I learned from the best. They drove in silence for a while, the city waking up around them. Lena watched Chicago slide past, familiar streets that felt different now. She was different now. For what it's worth, Adrian said as they pulled up to his building, you were right about the forged signatures. That's what caught Victor. He was good at forgery, but not perfect. The handwriting analysis will be damning. All those years studying paintings, Lena murmured, learning to spot the fakes. Turns out it was exactly what you needed. They rode the elevator up in comfortable silence. The penthouse looked the same, but Lena knew nothing would ever be the same again. Get some sleep, Adrian said. We'll figure out next steps when you wake up. But Lena couldn't sleep. She stood at the windows, watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan, thinking about her father, about justice delayed 15 years, about the price of truth. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it, but curiosity, the same curiosity that had led her to examine that painting, to uncover that ledger, won out. The message was simple. Your father would be proud. A friend. Lena stared at it for a long time. Then she deleted it, blocked the number, and finally let herself cry. For her father. For herself. For the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. By the time Adrian emerged from his room hours later, Lena had made a decision. I'm going back to work, she said. At the museum. I want my life back. Adrian studied her. You sure? After everything, I'm still a conservator. That's who I am. She met his eyes. But I'm also someone who knows how to spot lies now, how to fight back, how to survive in your world. It's not my world anymore. No, Lena agreed. I guess it's not. They stood there, two people who'd survived something impossible, and for the first time in days, the future felt like something other than a threat. It felt like possibility. The Brennan Museum felt smaller than Lena remembered. She stood outside the employee entrance 3 days after the wedding, staring at the door she'd run through while armed men chased her. The memory was vivid enough to make her hands shake. You don't have to do this today, Adrian said. He'd insisted on driving her, on being there, though they both knew it made him conspicuous. A black Mercedes idling outside a museum drew attention. "Yes, I do." Lena adjusted the strap of her bag. Inside were her ID badge, her tools, and the small knife Adrian had given her. She hadn't been able to leave it behind. "If I don't walk in now, I never will. Call me when you're done. I'll pick you up." "Adrian, you can't keep—" "I can do whatever I want until Victor's people are rounded up. Some of them are still out there." His jaw was tight. "Humor me." Lena wanted to argue. Instead, she just nodded and walked inside. The security guard, a different one than the night of the attack, barely glanced at her badge. The hallways were the same institutional beige they'd always been. Her lab was on the 3rd floor, exactly where she'd left it. Marcus was already there, bent over a Renaissance panel that needed stabilization. He looked up when she entered, and something complicated crossed his face. "Lena!" He set down his tools carefully. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." "Neither was I." She hung up her coat, hyper-aware of how normal the action felt, how wrong normal felt now. "How are you?" "Alive, confused. The FBI questioned me for 6 hours. Marcus pulled off his gloves. "They said you helped expose a criminal organization, that you were working with them. I was running for my life. Adrian Vieri helped me not die." Lena moved to her workstation, touching the familiar surfaces. "Is that going to be a problem?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Should it be?" "I don't know. You tell me." "The FBI said people died because of what Victor Hale did. That he framed your father 15 years ago, that he's been laundering money through art donations and legitimate businesses." Marcus leaned against his desk. "They said you found evidence that cleared your father's name." Lena's throat tightened. "Yeah, I did." "Then no, it's not a problem." Marcus's voice was gentle. "But Lena, you should know, the board is meeting today. About the donation, about the painting, about what happened. They're going to want answers." "What kind of answers?" "The kind where they decide if you still work here." The words hit harder than they should have. This job was all she had left of her carefully constructed life. The idea of losing it, of being cast out again. "When?" she asked. 2 o'clock. Director Walsh wants to see you in her office." Lena checked her watch. 4 hours. She had 4 hours to prepare a defense for something that wasn't entirely her fault, but also kind of was. She spent those hours doing what she did best, working. There was a 19th century oil painting that needed cleaning, the kind of meticulous, absorbing work that made everything else fall away. By the time her phone alarm went off at 1:45, she'd almost forgotten to be nervous. Almost. Director Walsh's office was on the top floor, all windows and modern furniture that clashed with the museum's classical architecture. Walsh herself was in her 60s, brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. She'd run the Brennan for 20 years, and rumors said she'd turned down offers from the Met twice. "Miss Carter?" Walsh gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." Lena sat. Walsh remained standing, looking out at the city. "I've spent the last 3 days reading FBI reports," Walsh said, "learning things about our donors that I wish I didn't know. Did you realize that approximately 30% of anonymous art donations are connected to money laundering?" "I didn't." "Neither did I. But now we have protocols to implement, verification processes, additional due diligence." Walsh turned to face her. "All because you decided to examine a painting that should have just been logged and stored." "I was doing my job." "You were being curious. There's a difference." Walsh's expression was unreadable. "Your curiosity led to armed men in my museum, to chemical gas being released, to federal agents crawling through our records, to a donor, a generous, long-term donor, being arrested for murder and fraud." Lena's stomach dropped. "I'm fired." "You're not fired." Walsh sat down heavily. "The board wanted to fire you. They wanted to make an example, show that we take security seriously, protect the museum's reputation. I told them no." "Why?" "Because you did exactly what a conservator should do. You looked beneath the surface. You found the truth." Walsh's voice softened slightly. "And because your father was Carlo Moretti, and I knew him." Lena's breath caught. "You knew my father?" "We met at a conference in 2008. Art fraud and financial crime, boring academic panels that put everyone to sleep. Walsh smiled at the memory. He was brilliant, asked questions no one else thought to ask. And he told me he was looking into something, some irregularity in his accounts. Asked if I knew any conservators who specialized in provenance research. Did you help him? I gave him some names. Then he was arrested, and I assumed, like everyone else, that he was guilty. Walsh looked directly at Lena. I was wrong, and I've regretted not digging deeper for 15 years, so no, I'm not firing you for doing what I should have done. Lena didn't know what to say. This woman, the stranger, had known her father, had believed in him at least for a moment. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet. You're on probation for 6 months. Any more incidents, any more FBI raids, any more drama. I'll be gone. I understand. Good. Walsh stood. Now get back to work. That Caravaggio copyist piece isn't going to clean itself. Lena left the office feeling lighter than she had in days. She still had her job. She still had this place. She still had... Her phone buzzed. Adrian. Dinner tonight? Need to talk about something. Lena stared at the message. They'd been in constant contact since the wedding, but this felt different, more formal. She texted back, Your place or somewhere public? Public. Giuliano's, 7 o'clock. Giuliano's was an upscale Italian restaurant in River North, the kind of place where reservations took weeks, and the waiters could describe the wine pairings in 3 languages. Lena had never been there, never even thought about going there. I don't have anything to wear to a place like that. Wear whatever you want. They'll be happy to see us either way. There was a confidence in that response that made Lena both envious and irritated. Adrian moved through the world assuming doors would open for him. And they did, because money and power made those assumptions reality. She texted back, Fine, 7 o'clock. The rest of the day crawled. Lena tried to focus on the painting in front of her, on the delicate work of removing centuries of grime without damaging the original pigments. But her mind kept drifting to Adrian's message. What did he need to talk about? Were there still threats? Was Victor's organization retaliating? By 6 o'clock, she'd given up on productivity. She went home to her apartment, newly secured with locks that Dmitri had installed personally, and stared at her closet. Everything looked wrong, too casual or too formal, or too obvious. Finally, she settled on black pants and a silk blouse that she'd bought for a gallery opening 2 years ago and never worn. Simple. Professional. Not trying too hard. She arrived at Giuliano's at 7 exactly. Adrian was already there, seated at a corner table that probably cost extra for the privacy. He stood when he saw her, a gesture that felt oddly old-fashioned. You look nice, he said. You look tired. It was true. There were shadows under his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. I am tired. He waited for her to sit before settling back down. It's been a complicated week. How's the FBI cooperation going? Tedious? Endless depositions, document reviews, meetings with prosecutors? Adrian picked up his wine glass, then set it down without drinking. Victor's lawyers are claiming everything was his idea, that I was just a figurehead, trying to paint me as an innocent dupe. Are they succeeding? No. Agent Webb is thorough. He's got paper trails showing I was investigating Victor for months before you showed up, that I was building a case. Adrian finally took a drink. But it's going to be a long trial, probably 2 years before everything shakes out. The waiter appeared to take their order. Lena let Adrian choose for both of them, partly because everything on the menu was in Italian, partly because she was too distracted to care what she ate. When they were alone again, Adrian leaned forward. I need to tell you something. About the organization, about what happens next. Okay? The legitimate businesses, the real estate, the shipping company, the investments. I'm keeping them. Restructuring, bringing in new management, making sure everything's clean. He paused. But the rest of it, the parts that were connected to Victor's operation, that's being dismantled, sold off, shut down, turned over to the authorities. Good. Which means I'm going to have enemies. People who worked for Victor, people who profited from what he built. They're not going to be happy about losing their income streams. Lena felt cold. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying we both are. For the next year, maybe longer. Adrian's dark eyes were serious. Dimitri's staying on as security. Elena's helping untangle the financial mess. But I wanted you to know what you're walking into if you stay connected to me. Connected how? However you want to be connected. Friend, business associate, someone I occasionally have dinner with. He held her gaze. But I need you to understand, being around me right now is dangerous, and it's going to stay dangerous for a while. Lena thought about the knife in her bag, about the fact that she'd learned to check for tails when she walked home, about how her entire life had changed because she'd been curious about a painting. I understand, she said, and I'm not going anywhere. Why not? Because I'm tired of running. I ran from Marion, ran from my father's legacy, ran from anything that might complicate my nice, safe life. Lena's voice was steady. And where did that get me? Alone in a museum lab, pretending the past didn't exist? At least now I'm living in the truth. Adrian smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. The truth is messy. So am I, apparently. Their food arrived. Pasta that looked like art. Flavors that Lena couldn't even begin to identify. She ate mechanically, aware that this was probably incredible food, but unable to fully appreciate it. There's something else, Adrian said after a while. The painting, the one with the ledger. The FBI is keeping it as evidence, but eventually it'll be returned to the museum. When it is, I want you to restore it properly. Remove the forgery, document the ledger, preserve it as a historical artifact. Why? Because it's part of the story. Your father's story, my mother's story, everyone who got caught up in Victor's operation. Adrian set down his fork. It deserves to be preserved correctly. That could take months. I've got time. They finished dinner talking about inconsequential things. The museum, Chicago's weather, a documentary Adrian had watched about art forgers. Safe topics that skirted around the larger questions neither of them wanted to ask. When the check came, Adrian paid without looking at the total. They walked out into a cool spring evening, the city alive with Friday night energy. Can I drive you home? Adrian asked. I can take a cab. That wasn't what I asked. Lena looked at him, this man who'd pulled her into his world and somehow made her want to stay. Yeah, you can drive me home. They drove through Chicago in comfortable silence, the Mercedes gliding through traffic like it owned the roads. When they reached Lena's apartment building, Adrian insisted on walking her to her door. Dimitri checked the perimeter earlier, he said, but humor me. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it, clean, organized, with the new locks gleaming on the door. Adrian did a quick sweep of the rooms anyway, checking windows and closets like he expected to find someone hiding. You're paranoid, Lena said. I'm careful. There's a difference. He turned to face her. Lock the door after I leave. If anything feels wrong, even slightly off, you call me immediately. Adrian, promise me. She could see the fear in his eyes, buried under layers of control, but present. He'd lost his mother to Victor's scheming. He wasn't going to lose anyone else if he could help it. I promise, she said. He nodded once, then moved toward the door, stopped, turned back. I'm glad you're here, he said quietly. Glad you're alive. Glad you're not running. Me too. He left. Lena locked the door behind him, engaged the deadbolt, and stood in her quiet apartment feeling the weight of everything that had changed. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Enjoy dinner? Victor says hello from his cell. A concerned friend, Lena's blood ran cold. She screenshot the message and immediately called Adrian. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? I got a text from someone claiming to speak for Victor. Silence on the other end, then. Forward it to me, now, and pack a bag. You're not staying there tonight. Adrian, I can't keep running every time. This isn't running. This is surviving. Pack a bag. I'm turning around. He hung up. Lena stood frozen for a moment, then moved into action. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, work files. She was shoving everything into a duffel when her apartment's fire alarm started screaming. No smoke. No heat. Just the alarm, piercingly loud. Lena grabbed her bag and her phone and ran for the door. In the hallway, other residents were emerging confused and annoyed. The building had old alarms that went off at least once a month. Usually, it was nothing. Usually. Lena took the stairs instead of the elevator, her bag heavy on her shoulder. She was on the 4th floor. The stairs were concrete and metal, her footsteps echoing. On the second-floor landing, she nearly collided with someone coming up. A man, 30s, average height, wearing maintenance coveralls that looked wrong somehow. Too clean, too new. Their eyes met. He smiled. "Miss Carter, what a coincidence." Lena didn't think. She swung her bag at his head as hard as she could. He blocked it, grabbed her wrist, and suddenly they were fighting on the stairwell landing. He was stronger, better trained. But Lena had spent the last week learning to fight dirty. She stomped on his instep with her heel, drove her knee toward his groin, and when he doubled over, she ran. Down the stairs, legs pumping, the fire alarm still screaming. Behind her, footsteps. He was following. She burst into the lobby where residents were gathered, confused about the alarm. The man chasing her wouldn't do anything in front of witnesses. She hoped. Adrian's Mercedes screeched to a stop outside. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, moving through the crowd with purpose. "Lena!" She ran to him. "There's someone—" "I know. Get in the car." Dimitri was driving. Adrian shoved Lena into the back seat and climbed in after her, already on his phone. "We need police at 1847 North Lincoln. Possible assault, definitely harassment, and check the goddamn fire system. Someone triggered it manually." They pulled away from the curb fast enough to leave rubber. Lena looked back to see the man in coveralls watching from the lobby, still smiling. "Who was that?" she gasped. "One of Victor's people. We have photos, but he's been careful not to do anything actionable until now." Adrian's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Did he hurt you?" "No, I hit him with my bag." Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. "Of course you did." They drove to Adrian's building, Dimitri taking a route that looped back on itself twice to check for tails. Lena's hands were shaking with adrenaline. Her wrist hurt where the man had grabbed her. Back in the penthouse, Adrian poured her a drink she didn't want and made calls she couldn't follow. Dimitri disappeared to coordinate security, and Lena sat on the couch, in expensive clothes that now felt like a costume, trying to process the fact that someone had been in her building, waiting for her. "Agent Webb is sending someone to your apartment," Adrian said, hanging up. "They'll process it as a crime scene, get evidence." "This is never going to end, is it?" Lena's voice was flat. "There's always going to be someone trying to finish what Victor started." "Not always, but for now, yes." Adrian sat beside her. "I'm sorry. I should have had better security on your building. I should have— Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. Someone just tried to grab you because of me. That is my fault. Someone tried to grab me because of Victor, because he's a murderous bastard with loyal employees." Lena took a shaky breath. "And because I chose to stay involved. That was my decision." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "You could still leave. Witness protection, new identity, somewhere Victor's people would never find you. And spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if today's the day they figure out where I am?" Lena shook her head. "No, I'm done hiding." "Then what do you want to do?" It was a good question. What did she want? Safety was clearly off the table. Her old life was gone, probably forever. But sitting here in Adrian's penthouse waiting for the next threat, that wasn't living either. "I want to finish this," she said slowly. "Victor's people are still out there, still operating, still hurting people. I want to help stop them." "Lena, you're not a cop. You're not trained for this." "I'm a conservator. I'm trained to look at something damaged and figure out how to repair it." She met his eyes. "Your organization is damaged. Help me figure out how to fix it." "That's not the same thing, isn't it? You said you're keeping the legitimate businesses. That means you need to know what's legitimate and what's not. You need someone who can look at your operations with fresh eyes, someone who knows how to spot forgeries and fraud." Lena's voice grew stronger. "I can do that. I can help you clean house properly." Adrian was quiet, thinking. "It would put you directly in the line of fire. Anyone dirty in my organization would see you as a threat. They already do." "Fair point." He stood, paced to the windows. "Elena would work with you. She's already doing forensic accounting, but having someone else verify her findings would catch things she might miss." "Yeah." Lena stood too, energized by having a plan, a purpose. "And I'd be useful instead of just hiding." "You'd be a target." "I'm already a target." Adrian turned to face her. "You understand what you're proposing? full access to my business operations, my financial records, my personnel files, you'd be in deeper than you've ever been. Good. Maybe then we can actually end this. He studied her face, and Lena saw the moment he made his decision. Okay. We do this right. Official consulting contract, payment, the works. Elena briefs you starting tomorrow. Dimitri assigns you security, and you report anything suspicious directly to Agent Webb and the FBI. Agreed. And Lena? Adrian's voice was serious. The moment this gets too dangerous, the moment you want out, you tell me. No judgment, no questions. You just walk away. I will. She meant it, mostly. But I don't think I'm going to want out. Why not? Because for the first time in 15 years, I'm doing something that matters. Something my father would have done if he'd had the chance. Lena smiled, and it felt real. I'm finishing his work. Adrian nodded slowly. He'd be proud of you, for what it's worth. It's worth a lot. They stood there in the dimming light. The city spread out below them, and Lena felt something shift. She wasn't a victim anymore, wasn't running. She was choosing this, the danger, the work, the fight. She was choosing to stand. The next morning, Elena arrived at the penthouse with 3 banker's boxes full of files and a laptop that looked like it could launch missiles. So Adrian tells me you want to learn forensic accounting? Elena said, setting up on the dining table. Are you insane or just suicidal? Little bit of both. Lena pulled up a chair. Where do we start? With coffee. Lots of coffee. Elena opened the first box. Then we start with the shipping company. It's the cleanest of the operations, which means if there's dirt, it's buried deep. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, Elena explaining financial structures while Lena took notes and asked questions. It was like learning a new language, one where every number told a story and every transaction had layers of meaning. By evening, Lena's head was spinning with corporate entities and shell companies and the dozen ways money could be moved without leaving obvious traces. You're getting it, Elena said, impressed. Most people take weeks to see the patterns. I'm used to looking at patterns, just usually in paint, not profit and loss statements. Same principle, really. Follow the layers, see what's hiding underneath. Elena closed her laptop. We'll continue tomorrow. And Lena? Be careful. The people we're investigating, they're not going to appreciate what we're doing. I know. Elena left. Lena stayed at the table, reviewing notes, until Adrian came home from whatever meetings had occupied his day. How'd it go? He asked. I think I might actually be good at this. Lena looked up. Elena found 3 suspicious transactions in the shipping company just this afternoon. Someone's been skimming, hiding it in routine maintenance costs. Did you report it to Webb? Elena did. He's opening an investigation. Adrian smiled, tired but genuine. See? Useful already. They ordered takeout and ate while Lena explained what she'd learned. Adrian listened, asked good questions, and somewhere in the middle of discussing freight manifests and customs documentation, Lena realized she was enjoying herself. This was work she could do, work that mattered. Thank you, she said suddenly. For what? For letting me help, for not treating me like I'm fragile. Lena set down her chopsticks. Everyone else, Walsh, Marcus, even Dimitri, they all act like I'm going to break. You don't. That's because you're not going to break. Adrian's voice was certain. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Lena. What you've survived, what you've done, most people would have crumbled. I've thought about crumbling plenty of times. But you didn't. That's what matters. They finished dinner talking about easier things. And when Lena finally went to her guest room, she slept better than she had in weeks. The next 2 months fell into a rhythm. Days spent with Elena, digging through financial records and finding the rot Victor had carefully hidden. Evenings with Adrian, discussing what they'd found and planning next steps. Weekends at the museum when she could manage it, maintaining the work that still felt like home. They found evidence of embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. Every discovery led to arrests, to people in Adrian's organization being exposed and removed. The cleanup was brutal, exhausting, and necessary. Victor's trial started. Lena testified about finding the ledger, about the forged signatures, about her father's case. Victor's lawyers tried to paint her as unreliable, as someone with an agenda, Agent Webb's team destroyed those arguments with evidence: financial records, witness testimony, forensic analysis. By midsummer, it was clear Victor would spend the rest of his life in prison. His organization was in pieces, and Adrian's businesses were finally clean, but the threats didn't stop. Victor's people, those still loyal, still angry, continued to probe for weaknesses. Lena's apartment had 3 more incidents. Adrian's car was vandalized twice. Elena received death threats weekly. They adapted, learned to live with security details and constant vigilance, learned which restaurants were safe and which neighborhoods to avoid, learned to check their cars before starting them and their mail before opening it. It was exhausting, but it was also life, messy and complicated and real. On a humid August evening, Agent Webb called Adrian with news. "We got him," Webb said. Lena could hear him through the phone. Victor's lieutenant, the one coordinating the harassment. "He made a mistake, used a phone we were monitoring. We picked him up an hour ago." Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. And he's cooperating, giving us names, locations, everything. Says he's done fighting for someone in prison. Webb paused. "It's over, Adrian. Really over this time." When Adrian hung up, he just sat there for a moment, processing. "It's done?" Lena asked. "It's done." She waited for relief, for joy. Instead, she felt strangely hollow. They'd spent months fighting, surviving, building toward this moment, and now it was just over. "What do we do now?" she asked. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. "Whatever we want." The question hung in the air between them. Whatever we want. It sounded simple, almost naive, but Lena couldn't remember the last time she'd had that kind of freedom. The last 15 years had been about survival, about running, about keeping her head down. And the last few months had been about fighting, about exposing Victor, about finishing what her father started. But now the cage door was open and she had no idea what to do with it. "I think I need a drink," she said. Adrian stood and moved to the bar cart he kept near the windows. "Whiskey or wine?" "Surprise me." He poured 2 glasses of something amber and brought one to her. Lena took it and drank without tasting, the burn familiar and grounding. "Agent Webb wants us to come in tomorrow," Adrian said, settling back into his chair. "Final debriefing, paperwork, the official end of the investigation. He says the U.S. attorney is recommending no charges against me for my cooperation." "That's good." "Yeah." But Adrian didn't sound relieved. He sounded tired. "I've been thinking about what comes next. The businesses are clean now, or as clean as they're going to get. Elena's staying on to keep them that way. Dimitri's transitioning to a legitimate security firm I'm funding. And you? I don't know." He took a drink, staring out at the city. "I spent 8 years running an empire I inherited, half of which turned out to be built on my mother's corpse. That's a lot to come back from." Lena understood that better than most. "My father's exoneration came through last week. Official declaration from the state of Illinois. His conviction is vacated, his name is clear, 15 years too late, but clear." "Did it help? Seeing it in writing?" "I thought it would." She turned the glass in her hands. "I thought I'd feel this huge sense of relief, like I could finally let go. But mostly, I just feel angry that it took this long, that he had to die thinking he'd failed." "He didn't fail. He found the truth. You finished exposing it." Adrian looked at her. "That's not nothing." "No, but it's not enough either." Lena set down her glass. "I keep thinking about all the other people Victor destroyed, the investors who lost everything, the families he tore apart, the lives he casually ruined. My father was just one in a long line. Webb's team is working on identifying other victims. Some cases might be reopenable. Some, not all." Lena stood and walked to the windows. Chicago sparkled below, indifferent to the small dramas of the people who lived in it. Victor's going to die in prison, but the damage he did, that's permanent. That's forever. Adrian joined her at the window. "You can't fix everything, Lena." "I know. Doesn't stop me from wanting to try." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city. Then Adrian said, "I have a proposition for you." "Should I be worried?" "Probably." He turned to face her. "The businesses I'm keeping, they're worth approximately $400 million. Real estate, shipping, legitimate investments. They need oversight, someone to make sure they stay clean, someone who knows how to spot the signs of corruption before it takes root. Lena's pulse quickened. You want me to work for you? I want you to work with me. As a partner. Equal stake, equal say, equal control. Adrian's voice was steady, serious. Elena handles the financial side, Dmitri handles security, and you handle integrity. You'd have full access to everything, full authority to investigate anything that looks suspicious, and full backing to shut down anything that crosses the line. That's insane. It's practical. You've proven you can do this work. You're good at it. And more importantly, I trust you. He paused. You're one of maybe 3 people in this world I can say that about. Lena's mind was racing. A partnership. Real power. Real resources. Real ability to make a difference. It was everything she'd never thought to want, and somehow exactly what she needed. What about the museum? She asked. Keep working there if you want. This would be part-time consulting, at least at first. If it grows into something more, Adrian shrugged. We figure it out. And if I say no? Then you say no. No hard feelings, no pressure. You've already done more than anyone had a right to ask. Lena turned back to the window, thinking. The conservator's life she'd built, quiet, safe, anonymous, was gone. Whether she took this offer or not, Victor had seen to that. She could try to rebuild something similar, find another museum, another city, another chance to disappear. Or she could step into something bigger, something that scared her and excited her in equal measure. I need time to think about it, she said finally. Take all the time you need. But even as she said it, Lena knew what her answer would be. She'd known since the moment Adrian made the offer. She was just afraid to admit how much she wanted it. The next morning, they met Agent Webb at the FBI field office downtown. The building was all concrete and glass, aggressively functional, with security that made airport checkpoints look casual. Webb met them in a conference room with a view of the river and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since dawn. Congratulations, Webb said, though he didn't look particularly happy about it. You both survived an organized crime investigation, which puts you in a pretty exclusive club. Do we get jackets? Lena asked. Webb almost smiled. What you get is closure. Victor Hale's organization is dismantled. His remaining associates are either arrested, cooperating, or running. The financial networks are frozen, the assets are being seized, and the victims... He paused. We're working on restitution. It won't be everything, but it's something. How many victims? Adrian asked. Confirmed? 47 individuals or families who lost significant money through Victor's schemes. Probable? Could be triple that. We're still sorting through the records. Webb looked at Lena. Your father's case opened the door to reviewing others. The State Attorney General's office is setting up a task force. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, more like acknowledgement. Her father hadn't died for nothing. His sacrifice had led to this. Real justice, real change, real accountability. Thank you, she said quietly. Webb nodded. As for you two, you're officially clear. Adrian, your cooperation deal is finalized. No charges, no further investigation, clean slate. Lena, same. Your victims and witnesses, nothing more. What about the threats? Adrian asked. The harassment, the attempts on Lena's life? We've arrested or identified everyone involved. The main coordinator flipped, gave us names. Some are already in custody. The rest are being picked up today. Webb closed the file in front of him. You're as safe as you're going to be in this life. Which is to say, safer than you were, but never completely safe? That's not comforting, Lena said. It's honest. You both know too much, did too much damage to too many powerful people. Some of them are going to hold grudges. Webb's expression was serious. My advice? Keep the security, stay vigilant, and don't assume the danger is completely over. But the active, organized threat? That's done. They finished the meeting with more paperwork than Lena thought possible. Statements, witness protection offers they both declined, contact information for the victim's assistance office. By the time they left the federal building, it was past noon and Lena's head was throbbing. Food? Adrian suggested. God, yes. They ended up at a diner in Greektown, the kind of place with laminated menus and waitresses who called everyone honey. It was aggressively normal, which was exactly what Lena needed. So, Adrian said after they'd ordered, have you thought more about my offer? I've thought about nothing else. And? Lena took a breath. I want to say yes, but I need you to understand what you're getting. I'm not going to be easy to work with. I'm going to question everything, investigate everything, probably drive you crazy with my paranoia. I'm counting on it. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to miss things, get things wrong, maybe even make things worse sometimes. She met his eyes. I'm not perfect at this. I'm barely competent. You're more than competent, and I don't need perfect. I need honest. Adrian's voice was steady. So yes or no, Lena? Are you in? She thought about her father, about the quiet conservator she'd been just months ago, about the person she'd become through fire and fear and fighting back. I'm in, she said. Adrian smiled, genuine and relieved. Good. Elena's going to be thrilled. She's been hoping you'd say yes. She has? She likes working with someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. He pulled out his phone. I'll have the lawyers draw up the partnership papers. Should be ready to sign by next week. That fast? I've had them working on it for 3 weeks, just in case. Adrian looked almost embarrassed. I was optimistic. Despite everything, Lena laughed. You're ridiculous. I'm prepared. There's a difference. Their food arrived, and they ate in comfortable silence, the weight of the last few months finally starting to lift. When they finished, Adrian paid and they walked out into a humid afternoon that smelled like rain. What now? Lena asked. Now we go back to the museum and you finish your actual job. I have meetings about liquidating the last of Victor's assets. Tonight, Elena wants to celebrate with dinner at her place. You're invited. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we start building something new. Adrian looked at her. Something better. Something that might actually help people instead of just enriching ourselves. It was ambitious, probably impossible, but Lena found herself believing it anyway. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Lena returned to work at the museum full-time, falling back into the rhythm of conservation work with a relief that surprised her. The painting with the hidden ledger came back from FBI custody, and Lena spent careful, painstaking hours removing the portrait layer and properly documenting the ledger beneath. Director Walsh approved an exhibition about art and financial fraud, with Lena's discovery as the centerpiece. In her off hours, she worked with Elena on the partnership agreement and business structure. Adrian was serious about giving her real power, equal voting rights, full access to financial records, authority to investigate and terminate anyone she suspected of corruption. This is a lot of trust, Elena said one evening as they reviewed contracts. You understand what you're walking into? A business partnership with a reformed crime boss? Yeah, I get it. Adrian's serious about going legitimate, about doing this right. Elena's voice was careful. But there are people in these organizations, people we kept on because they're good at their jobs, who might not like having someone looking over their shoulders. Then they can quit. Some of them might do worse than quit. Elena met her eyes. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to make sure you know the risks. I know the risks. I've been living with them for months. Lena signed the contract with a flourish. And I'm still here. The partnership was finalized on a rainy September morning in a lawyer's office that smelled like old books and expensive cologne. Lena signed her name 17 times, initialed 14 more, and walked out with ownership of businesses she'd never imagined running. How does it feel? Adrian asked as they left. Terrifying. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. They celebrated that night with dinner at Adrian's place, just the core group. Elena brought champagne she'd been saving for a special occasion. Dmitri told embarrassing stories about Adrian's early days running the family business. And Lena sat there feeling like she'd somehow stumbled into a family she hadn't known she needed. To new beginnings, Elena toasted, and to not getting killed. I'll drink to that, Dmitri agreed. They drank and talked and laughed, and for the first time in years, Lena felt like she belonged somewhere. Not hiding, not running, not pretending to be someone she wasn't, just being. Late in the evening, after Elena and Dmitri had left, Lena and Adrian stood on his balcony, looking out at the city. I've been thinking, Adrian said, about what we do with this. The money, the power, the resources. And there are 47 confirmed victims of Victor's schemes, maybe 100 more. Most of them lost everything, life savings, retirement funds. their children's college money. He turned to face her. I want to make them whole. All of them. That's going to cost millions. I have millions. And once we liquidate the last of Victor's assets, we'll have more. Adrian's voice was firm. It's the right thing to do. The only thing to do. Lena thought about her father, about the pension fund investors in Marion who'd lost their savings, about all the lives Victor had casually destroyed. We'll need a foundation, she said slowly. Legal structure, oversight, verification process. Elena can help set it up. Will you run it? Me? You understand what these people lost better than anyone. And you know how to spot fraud, how to make sure the money actually reaches the victims and doesn't get stolen again. Adrian's dark eyes were steady. I can't think of anyone better. Well, Zelina felt something shift inside her, a sense of purpose that went beyond just survival or revenge. This was something constructive, something that might actually help people heal. Okay, she said, I'll do it. The foundation took 3 months to establish. Lena worked with Elena and a team of lawyers to create something airtight, something that couldn't be corrupted or misused. They called it the Moretti Trust, after her father, and the first checks went out in December. Watching the money reach people who'd been destroyed by Victor's greed was more satisfying than Lena had expected. There were tears, thank you letters, stories of how the restitution was changing lives. Not fixing everything, nothing could fix everything, but helping, making things a little bit better. By spring, the trust had returned over $50 million to verified victims. By summer, that number had doubled, and every check that went out carried Lena's signature and her father's name. The museum exhibition opened in June to surprising acclaim. Lena gave interviews about the discovery, about conservation work and financial fraud, carefully avoiding the more dramatic details of how she'd actually uncovered the ledger. The media loved the story anyway, the quiet conservator who'd exposed a criminal empire. You're famous now, Marcus teased her one afternoon in the lab. Should I start calling you Professor Carter? Please don't. Too late. It's already on your nameplate. But the attention brought opportunities. Other museums reached out about questionable donations. Law enforcement agencies asked for consulting on art-related fraud. Universities wanted her to lecture on provenance research and financial crimes. Lena said yes to some of it, no to most of it, and learned to navigate the strange space between her old life and her new one. Adrian's businesses continued to grow, but differently now. They turned down contracts that looked even slightly questionable. They implemented oversight systems that would have made Victor furious. And every quarter, they diverted a percentage of profits to the trust. We're actually doing it, Elena said one evening, reviewing the numbers. Building something legitimate, something good. Don't sound so surprised, Adrian said. I'm not surprised. I'm impressed. Elena looked at Lena. And it's because of you. The integrity checks, the oversight systems, the culture change. That's all you. It's all of us, Lena corrected. But she felt the pride anyway. In August, nearly a year after the wedding that had changed everything, Lena finally returned to Victor's estate. Not for a party this time, for a trial. Victor's criminal trial had been going for months, but the civil case, the one brought by his victims, was just concluding. Lena was the final witness, called to testify about the ledger and what it revealed. She walked into that courtroom in a gray suit that Elena had picked out, carrying the documentation she'd meticulously prepared. And when she took the stand, she looked directly at Victor. He'd aged in prison. The silver hair was thinner, the patrician features hollowed out. But his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, unrepentant. Miss Carter, the plaintiff's attorney said, can you explain to the jury what you found in the painting? Lena described the conservation process, the discovery of the ledger, the forged signatures. She walked the jury through every detail, showing them exactly how Victor had used her father as a pawn in a larger game. And when she was finished, when the attorney said no further questions, Lena looked at Victor one last time. He was staring at her with something like respect, or maybe hatred. It was hard to tell the difference. The jury found against Victor on all counts. Damages were set at $140 million, to be distributed among the victims. Victor's remaining assets, the estate, the art collection, everything he'd built, would be seized and liquidated. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Lena ignored them, walking to where Adrian waited by the car. How do you feel? He asked. Done? Lena took a breath of humid summer air. It's finally done. Yeah, it is. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence. When they reached Adrian's building, Lena expected him to park. Instead, he kept driving. Where are we going? Somewhere I should have taken you months ago. They drove out of the city, north into the suburbs, then west into areas Lena didn't recognize. Finally, Adrian pulled into a cemetery. Marion Memorial Gardens, he said quietly. I looked it up. Your father's buried here. Lena's throat tightened. She'd never visited her father's grave. Hadn't been able to face it. Hadn't wanted to see his name on a stone that recorded his supposed crimes. But that stone would be different now. The exoneration had seen to that. They walked through neat rows of headstones until they found it. Carlo Moretti, beloved father. The dates of his birth and death. And beneath that, newly engraved, exonerated 2024. His name cleared, his honor restored. Lena knelt in the grass, touching the cold marble. Hi, Dad, she whispered. I finished it. What you started. They know the truth now. Beside her, Adrian stood quietly, giving her space. I'm okay, Lena continued, speaking to the stone. More than okay, actually. I found people who care about me. Found work that matters. Found a way to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else. Her voice cracked. I wish you could see it. I wish you could know. She stayed there for a long time, crying silently, saying everything she'd never gotten to say. When she finally stood, Adrian was there with a handkerchief and steady presence. Thank you, she said, for bringing me here. You deserved closure, real closure. They drove back to Chicago as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. And somewhere on that drive, Lena felt the last piece of her grief settle into something bearable. Not gone, it would never be gone, but manageable. That night, standing in Adrian's penthouse with its view of the city and its expensive art and its history of both darkness and redemption, Lena made a decision. I'm buying a place, she said. My own apartment, my own space, somewhere I can actually call home. Adrian looked up from the whiskey he'd been pouring. You're moving out? Eventually, not because I don't appreciate everything you've done, but because I need to stand on my own. She met his eyes. I've been dependent on you for almost a year. Hiding here, using your security, living in your shadow, that needs to change. You're not in my shadow. Maybe not, but I need to prove that to myself. Lena took the glass he offered. Elena's helping me find a place, somewhere with good security, close to the museum. I'll still work with you, still be your partner, but I need my own life too. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I understand. And for what it's worth, I think you're right. You do? You've spent your whole adult life defining yourself by what you're running from. First your father's case, then Victor's threats. It's time you figured out who you are when you're not in survival mode. What if I don't like who that is? Then you'll change. That's the point of freedom. You get to choose. Lena found her apartment in October. A 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, close enough to the museum for an easy commute, but far enough from Adrian's building to feel independent. It had good light, enough space for a home office, and a doorman who took security seriously. Moving in felt strange and liberating in equal measure. Elena helped her pick out furniture. Dmitri supervised the security installation, and Adrian showed up with a housewarming gift, a small, abstract painting that Lena recognized from his collection. You can't give me a Kandinsky, she protested. It's a study, not a major work, and it's yours. Adrian hung it on her living room wall with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Every home needs art. The painting stayed. Lena gradually filled the space with books and her own smaller pieces, prints she'd collected, sketches from artist friends, photographs of places she'd traveled. It became hers in a way nothing had been hers in years. Work at the museum continued. The exhibition was so successful that Director Walsh asked Lena to develop a new conservation program focused on fraud detection. Lena said yes, and found herself training other conservators in the techniques she'd developed. The partnership with Adrian evolved too. They met weekly to review the businesses, to discuss concerns, to make decisions together. Lena had found her rhythm, questioning everything but trusting the people she'd learned to trust, investigating thoroughly but not letting paranoia paralyze her. There were still threats occasionally, anonymous emails, suspicious packages, the kind of low-level harassment that came with having destroyed a criminal empire, but they were manageable now, background noise rather than existential danger. Elena's forensic accounting work uncovered 2 more fraud schemes in Adrian's organization over the next year. Both times, Lena helped investigate, and both times they reported the findings to authorities. Employees were arrested, prosecutions followed, and the businesses became cleaner. "We're building something sustainable here," Elena said during one of their quarterly reviews. "Something that might actually last." "Don't jinx it," Dmitry warned, but he was smiling. By the second anniversary of finding the ledger, Lena's life had achieved a balance she hadn't thought possible. She worked at the museum 4 days a week, consulted for Adrian's businesses one day, and spent weekends on trust work and her own projects. She dated occasionally, though nothing serious. She made friends outside of work, people who knew nothing about Victor or crime families or hidden ledgers. She was improbably happy. On a cold November evening, Adrian invited her to dinner at his place. Nothing formal, just the core group again: Elena, Dmitry, and a few others who'd become family over the years. "I have news," Adrian said over dessert. "The last of Victor's assets were liquidated this week. The estate, the art collection, everything. It brought in $80 million. "Where's it going?" Lena asked. "Half to the trust, for victim restitution and ongoing support. The other half," Adrian looked around the table, "I want to use it to start something new. A legitimate foundation focused on fighting financial fraud, supporting whistleblowers, helping people navigate the system when they've been victimized." "That's ambitious," Elena said. "It's necessary, and I want all of you involved. Elena running the financial side, Dmitry handling security for people in danger, Lena as director." Adrian's voice was steady. "This is what we do with what we've learned. We help other people not become victims." Lena felt that familiar pull of purpose, of work that mattered. "I'm in," she said. Around the table, everyone else agreed. And just like that, they had a new mission. The foundation launched the following spring. They called it the Integrity Project, and it quickly became a resource for people facing the kind of corruption and fraud that had destroyed Lena's father. They provided legal support, financial expertise, security when needed. They helped whistleblowers come forward safely. They connected victims with resources for recovery. It was hard work, exhausting work, but it was also the most meaningful thing Lena had ever done. 3 years after finding that ledger in a forgotten painting, Lena Carter stood at the podium of a university auditorium, giving a lecture on art conservation and financial fraud. The room was full: students, professionals, academics, people who wanted to learn how to spot the lies hidden in layers of paint and paper. "The truth is always there," she told them. "Sometimes buried, sometimes obscured, but there. You just have to be willing to look closely enough to find it." After the lecture, a young woman approached her. "Miss Carter, I just wanted to say thank you. My father lost everything to a fraud scheme 5 years ago. Your foundation helped us get some of it back. He can retire now, like he planned." Lena felt her chest tighten. "I'm glad we could help." "He wanted me to tell you," the young woman's voice cracked. "He wanted me to tell you that you gave him his dignity back. That matters more than the money." After the woman left, Lena stood in the empty auditorium for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and texted Adrian. "We're doing good work." His response came immediately. "Yes, we are." That evening, Lena returned to her apartment, her space, her home, her life. She made dinner and ate while reviewing case files for the Integrity Project. She called her aunt in Oregon, the one who'd raised her after her father died, and told her about the lecture. "He'd be proud of you," her aunt said. "Carlo would be so proud." "I know." And Lena did know. She'd finally stopped living in the shadow of her father's death and started living up to his legacy. Later, she stood at her window looking out at Chicago, the city that had become home, the place where she'd found herself and lost herself and found herself again. Her phone buzzed. A group text from Elena. "Dinner Friday? My place. I'm making that pasta you all pretend to like." Dmitry responded, "We're not pretending. It's legitimately terrible." Adrian, "I'll bring wine. Good wine." Lena smiled and typed, "I'll be there." Because this was her life now. Not the one she'd planned, not the one she'd imagined, but the one she'd fought for and earned and built from the ruins of everything that had come before. She was no longer the quiet conservator who kept her head down. She was no longer the daughter of a convicted criminal carrying shame like armor. She was Lena Carter, partner in a legitimate business, director of a foundation that helped people, friend, survivor, someone who'd looked at corruption and didn't run, someone who'd chosen to stand and fight. The city lights sparkled below her, full of secrets and lies and truths waiting to be uncovered. And Lena knew that tomorrow she'd be back at it, investigating, questioning, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. But tonight, she was home. She was safe. She was enough. And that, finally, was everything. She thought about sending one more text to Adrian, something about gratitude or partnership, or the strange journey they'd taken together. But words felt inadequate for what had passed between them. The trust built through fire, the partnership forged in crisis, the mutual respect that had become something like family. Instead, she just pulled up the photo on her phone, the one Dmitri had taken at Elena's last dinner party. All of them around the table, laughing at something Lena couldn't even remember now. Adrian's rare smile, Elena mid-gesture, making some point, Dmitri looking genuinely relaxed. They looked like what they were, people who'd survived impossible things together and somehow come out better for it. Lena set the phone down and opened her laptop. There was always more work to do, always more victims who needed help, more fraud to expose, more truth to uncover. But it wasn't burden anymore. It was purpose. She thought about the painting that had started everything, Woman in Blue with its hidden ledger and its layers of deception. The FBI had finally released it permanently to the museum, and Lena had finished the restoration last month. The portrait was gone, carefully removed and preserved separately. Now the ledger was displayed openly, a testament to everything it had exposed. Director Walsh had asked Lena to write the exhibition text. She'd spent hours on it, trying to capture not just the historical significance, but the human cost. In the end, she'd written simply, "Sometimes the truth is hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look." This ledger represents 15 years of fraud, corruption, and lives destroyed. It also represents the courage it takes to expose those crimes, and the justice that can come when people refuse to look away. Her father would have liked that, she thought, would have appreciated the simplicity, the honesty. Outside her window, Chicago continued its eternal motion, trains running, cars streaming, people living their complicated lives. And Lena was part of it now, no longer hiding in the margins, but fully present. Her phone buzzed one more time. Adrian, breaking from the group chat to send her a private message. "Thank you for saying yes to all of it. My life is better with you in it." Lena stared at the message for a long moment. They'd never really talked about what they were to each other. Partners? Yes. Friends? Definitely. But there was something more there too, something neither of them had been brave enough to name. She typed back, "Mine too. It was enough. For now, it was enough." She closed her laptop and got ready for bed, going through the new routines she'd built, checking the locks that Dmitri had installed, setting the security system, leaving a light on in the hall because complete darkness still made her nervous. Small accommodations to the trauma she'd survived, but getting smaller every day. In bed, Lena thought about tomorrow. Museum work in the morning, a lunch meeting with potential donors for the Integrity Project, afternoon calls with victims the foundation was helping. A full day, a good day, and Friday dinner with the people who'd become her family. She fell asleep thinking about her father, about the last conversation they'd had through prison glass, about how he'd looked at her with such desperate hope, begging her to believe him. "I believe you, Dad," she thought as sleep pulled her under. "I always believed you, and now everyone else does too." Somewhere in the city, in a high-rise penthouse of his own, Adrian stood at his windows thinking similar thoughts, about his mother, about the empire he'd inherited and dismantled and rebuilt, about the woman who'd walked into his life covered in chemical gas and fear, clutching a painting that would destroy everything, about how she'd saved him as much as he'd saved her. He raised his glass in a silent toast to the city, to survival, to the strange and impossible path that had led them both here. And in a comfortable house in Marion, Illinois, an older woman sat at her kitchen table looking at a letter from the state of Illinois. Official seal, legal language, but the meaning was clear. Carlo Moretti was innocent. His name was cleared, his honor restored. She cried, reading it for the third time. Her brother had been telling the truth. And now, finally, the world knew it. Across the city and the state and the country, 47 families, maybe more, received their restitution checks. Life-changing money. Apologies that came too late but still meant something. Acknowledgement of what they'd lost. It didn't fix everything. It couldn't bring back the years of struggling, the shame, the marriages that had failed under financial pressure, the dreams that had died. But it helped, and help, Lena had learned, was sometimes the best you could do. The next morning started gray and cold, Chicago settling into the kind of November that promised a hard winter. Lena dressed for the museum in layers, grabbed her coffee and her bag, and headed out into the world. On her way to the train, she passed a newsstand. The headline caught her eye. Victor Hale dies in prison, criminal mastermind dead at 68. Lena stopped, bought the paper, scanned the article. Heart attack, apparently. Quick, relatively painless. More mercy than he'd given his victims. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, not even the anger she'd carried for so long. Victor was just gone, a problem that had solved itself. She threw the paper away and continued to the train. At the museum, Marcus was already in the lab when she arrived. "Did you see the news?" he asked. "Yeah. How do you feel?" "Like I can finally close that chapter." Lena hung up her coat. "What are you working on?" And just like that, they were back to normal. Conservation work, careful hands, the quiet satisfaction of preserving beauty for future generations. This was her life now, not defined by Victor or her father or the trauma she'd survived. Just her work, her choices, her future. At lunch, she met with a potential donor for the Integrity Project, a wealthy businessman who'd been defrauded early in his career and wanted to help others avoid the same fate. He pledged $500,000 and asked how he could get more involved. "We're always looking for board members," Lena said. "People who understand what it's like to be victimized, who want to make sure others get the help they need." "Count me in." In the afternoon, she took calls from 3 different people the foundation was helping. A whistleblower who needed legal support. A fraud victim who couldn't navigate the restitution process. A small business owner whose partner had been embezzling for years. Each conversation was a reminder of why this work mattered. Why she'd chosen to keep fighting instead of walking away. By the time Friday evening arrived, Lena was exhausted and content. She showed up at Elena's apartment with wine and dessert, and found everyone already there. "To Victor's death," Dmitri toasted when they were all settled. "May he rot." "To closure," Elena amended. "To moving forward," Adrian said, looking at Lena. She raised her glass. "To surviving, to building something better, to family." They drank, and the evening unfolded the way these evenings always did. Food and wine and conversation that ranged from business to gossip to the kind of deep discussions that only happened with people who'd survived impossible things together. Late in the evening, after the others had left, Lena and Adrian stood on Elena's balcony looking out at the city. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked. "Getting involved, staying involved, choosing this life over the quiet one you had?" Lena thought about it honestly. "Sometimes, when I'm scared or when the work feels too hard or when I see what we're up against." She turned to look at him. "But mostly, no, this feels right. Like I'm finally doing what I'm supposed to be doing." "Good." Adrian's voice was soft. "Because I can't imagine doing this without you. You'd figure it out. Maybe, but it wouldn't be the same." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what comes next. After the foundation is established, after the businesses are fully clean, after all of this settles into routine. And I think we should expand, not just fraud prevention, but other kinds of corruption. Political, environmental, corporate. There's so much that needs exposing, so many people who need protection." His eyes were bright with possibility. "We could make a real difference, Lena. Not just fixing individual cases, but changing systems." It was ambitious. Maybe impossible. But Lena found herself believing anyway. "Let's do it," she said. They stood on that balcony planning their next impossibility, and Lena felt the future unfold in front of her like a story she finally had the courage to write. She was no longer running from her father's shadow. She was creating her own light, and in that light, surrounded by people who'd become family, building work that mattered, Lena Carter had finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not safety, not anonymity, not the quiet life, but purpose, partnership, power used for something good, the truth beneath the lies, and the courage to expose it again and again, no matter the cost. She was home. She was whole. She was free. And the story was just beginning.